AEW is great. I don't care, man. I know it's not perfect, and I know there are things to work through, but ultimately, when I look at the wrestling landscape, I give it a couple of thumbs. The scary thing is, All Elite Wrestling isn't new anymore. It's almost 6 years old the day I record this video, at least on its way to be. Scares the life out of me. It reminds me that one day I'm going to be dead. It's also wonderful because it means the promotion now has some experience under its belt, which means every now and then they've got into trouble. Not like bad trouble, but funny trouble, because once again, that's just what happens when you do exist. So hello, I am Simon Miller. Let's take a walk down memory lane and go, that was very silly. Pretend Jake Roberts used a real snake. So when Jake Roberts first debuted and verbally assaulted Cody Rhodes, I think we were all pretty excited, especially if you were a nerd old school fan. You're like, wow, it's the Jake of Snake of old. He is not called Jake of Snake. He also promoted a brand new client, which was of course Lance Archer. I actually thought these two guys had quite good chemistry. It's kind of a shame it came to an end, but at the same time, we keep on saying it. We must feature new faces. At one point though, all the feuds did get mixed up, so not only did you have Jake and Lance going after Cody, but Britt Baker was going after Brandy Rhodes. That's when, we kind of made a little bit of a mistake. So after Britt and Brandy had got into it and Brandy had been left laying, Jake did cover her in a way he never should have done. That was totally wrong. But also, he got out his very real snake, which now sounds terrible. It's not a euphemism, I'm talking about the animal, and he threw it on her. Listen, I get we did that back in the day, but in 2020, whatever the flub it was, well, it probably shouldn't have done it. Jake talked about this on his podcast too, and it was Warner that had said, listen, I don't 100% think this is the direction we should be going in. And I get it, man. Again, we have evolved as a species, ironically. If nothing else, you gotta protect the snake. I've no idea what Brandy Rhodes thought about this either. I mean, what if she was like Indiana Jones? And she didn't like snakes to begin with. Number 9, Chris Jericho smokes a cigar. Very early on, when Dynamite was but a baby, we had this really good angle when the Inner Circle tried to break Dustin Rhodes' arm, because of course it was tying into the big Chris Jericho and Cody Rhodes world title match. The older brother sold this so well, as did Jim Ross on commentary, and do not forget, this was a major story trying to get brand new fans through the door. Because at the time, it was like, wow, we haven't seen anything like this for ages. And yes, the stipulation about Cody never challenging for the World Championship again was a little bit silly, but you live and learn. The American Nightmare, of course, soon arrived to help his sibling, but Jericho was so proud of his work, he did actually light a cigar, and he started smoking it. I don't think he was Le Champion then, but he was on his way. It was a wonderful asshole move, though. Somebody else that didn't agree was once again the television network, because as Christopher told Stephanie Chase, when the TNT executives saw that, they called AEW and was like, maybe you don't want to break the law and smoke on television. Never did it again. Number 8, that rat pulled by Max Caster. Now listen, let's not pretend otherwise. At one point, one of the highlights of AEW were Max Caster's raps. He was doing a good job. And he went off the rails in 2021. Because mostly when you do drop bars like this, you always want to be punching up and not kicking downwards. Because when you do that, it can just feel a little bit mean. So when Max did indeed say that the Acclaim have been kicking ass for miles, and we ain't gonna claim mental health like Simone Biles, I was like, well, I don't think that should have come out of your mouth. I mean, again, just be nice to her. There's also a Duke lacrosse line, which I'm not going to get into here, but once again, let's just say we went way over the line. And there was some other stuff too, and all of it, when you do go back and listen to it, well, let's just say it was not kosher. Now, Max did get suspended, and the general feeling was that we had gone too far. But look, as long as we do live and learn, everything will be okay. Number 7, Brawl Out. So nobody actually knows what happens after CM Punk's infamous 2022 All Out promo, unless you are CM Punk, Kenny Omega, or the Young Bucks, or some other witnesses that were watching. Now, there was definitely a fight, but all the rumors got out of control instantly, because some people say that a door was knocked down, other people said poor Larry the dog got injured, which would not be cool. There apparently was some biting going on, and it was just not good for AEW PR at all, especially after a pay-per-view. You want your audience to be talking about the event. Now, of course, the trouble here is that everybody did get suspended as an investigation was launched, but surprise, surprise, Warner also got on the phone. They wanted to know what the flub was going on. Fightful were the people that reported this and just said they weren't necessarily happy, and you wouldn't be. Like, it doesn't matter if you own the company or not own the company. If this is airing on your network, well, you want things to be as peaceful as possible, and there's a reason we all talked about this for so long. It's totally unhinged. Number 6, Sting's debut. So this is one of my favorite debuts ever, because do not forget, Sting debuted in AEW in Daly's Place during the pandemic, and even though there was only a scattering of fans in that building, due to COVID, it sounded like it was 10,000 strong. That is the damn power of Sting. AEW deserved more credit as well, because like an idiot, I had no idea this was coming. But actually, when you go and watch all the build and the winter is coming tagline and the snow, which tied into Sting's entrance, well, that was right there. Now, as a fan, I am over the moon they kept this a shot, because again, I leapt out of my chair. But once again, Warner rang up AEW and was like, you brought Sting to the company and you didn't advertise this beforehand? I mean, again, it's not like the strangest thing in the world. Maybe if more people had have known, they would have tuned in. I mean, go look at his retirement. Now, there was some worry at the time because apparently the edict was now everybody has to get mentioned, but that didn't go down. And actually, fair play to AEW. I think they strike a good balance. Number 5, Matt Hardy is knocked out. All Out 2020 was cursed, I swear, because not only was the Florida humidity so high, the wrestlers were struggling, but Cash Wheeler in his tag team match almost lost an eye, or at least he couldn't see. That's horrible. Seemingly this was just one of those nights, because eventually we also got to the Broken Rules match between Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara. And honestly, this one went out of control. Because as they did tussle on a cherry picker before taking this horrible fall to the floor, you could see that Matt's head smacked right into the concrete, and the way he looked afterwards, I ain't kidding, my friends, if you never have seen this, it was really scary. Now, of course, wrestling has been based on a bunch of traditions for years, and the idea has always been, well, even if you do get knocked a bit loosey-goosey, we better keep going. But again, everyone and their dog was like, please, can somebody please protect Matthew Hardy? Now listen, I wrestle too, and I have been guilty of this as well. You just want to carry on, because again, that's the idea you get in your brain. But the AEW medical community, I suppose, or whatever you want to say, did get into a little bit of trouble here, mostly because a lot of fans were like, yep, let's not do that again. Now, I do think you have to give a shout out to all these people, because they did sit down and they reevaluated how we do communicate these things. So next time, if a wrestler is in danger, we can just stop the match and move on. Really though, this comes down to the industry as a whole, and I suppose you can argue it both ways, but don't forget, health and happiness is the most important thing in the world. I wouldn't even care if a referee got in the ring and goes, we're stopping this thing, because look, somebody needs help. Number 4, when Jungle Boy said pussy. I mean, there's a great headline, sums up wrestling. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube. We do all know that AEW loves the word shit though, and we'll get to that in just one second. And for a while, they replaced it with bitch. Though actually, that's an industry-wide thing. Wrestling promotions love the word bitch. We also get the occasional especially if you are The Rock. So I think one day Jungle Boy just went, well listen, I want to be creative here. He called Christian Cage a pussy. This was during the build to their All Out match. And Jungle Boy even came out the following week with a t-shirt that said Christian is a, I won't say it again. Surprise, surprise. Warner got in touch and went, no, that ain't happening, kill it. Now that is fair, because again, if you're trying to appeal to a wider audience, well, you probably shouldn't call someone the P word. But let's not pretend it's not funny. It's a little bit funny. Number 3, the excessive swearing. And it does all tie in because yes, this did get out of hand back in 2021, especially when Chris Jericho was making his entrance and Dan Lambert was so annoyed about this, he must have said the S word 4,722 times. Then later on, there was a back and forth between Bryan Danielson and Don Callis, and they said it another 476 times. It really did turn into that famous South Park episode. The Wrestling Observer reported that Warner had Rackham and said we need to calm this down. Although AEW's Will Washington told Fightful that's not true. We were the ones that actually told the wrestlers you are going way too far. And essentially, a lot of them were going in business for themselves. Now, I really am sure both are true. I'm sure AEW and Warner did chat about this. And Warner probably went, yeah, look, we agree with you. Please sort it out, otherwise we'll have to chat again. That really is way better now, because when it comes to these kind of words, less is more. We've talked about it a lot. But once again, let's not pretend it's not funny, because deep down we're all children. It's like when you were back in school and you think your parents were around, so you started saying the S word. You looked in the corner and you saw your mum. You were like, Number 2, that chair shot. So really overall, this is an industry-wide conversation again, because over the last few years, the chair shot to the head has made a very interesting comeback. Now once again, I'd rather wrestlers were healthy and well, because once again, they are going to retire from the ring. You never know what foibles are going to come up. But yeah, when AEW was getting going, we had a Cody Rhodes versus Shawn Spears feud. And man, one day on Fyter Fest, Shawn grabbed a chair and he walloped Rhodes right in the head. Now, it did turn out this weapon had been gimmicked, but again, it is a live scenario, and essentially the angle of the already gimmicked chair hit Cody in such a way that he was bleeding like crazy, and he needed a bunch of stitches. The trouble here actually came from the fans once again, because we do know about CTE. Listen, I can look at both sides here. If you think you do have a chair that isn't going to hurt anyone, well, I guess you can give it a go. But on the other end, it did hurt someone, so I'm going to be that guy again. Just please be careful, everybody. I don't want to be your dad. I also understand the argument that it should be down to the individual, but that's why the people at the top of the promotion should just send out a rule. Let's not smash each other in the head if we don't have to. Number 1, the Dark Order angle. So no one agrees with me, and that's totally fine. Life is about opinions, my friends. When the Dark Order did debut in AEW, the internet wrestling community at large went absolutely crazy. And no, look, this wasn't executed very well, but did I think the reaction was a little bit overboard? Yes. It came after the Young Bucks and SCU main event. At one point, the Dark Order even reached into Matt Jackson's mouth and ripped out his tongue. And of course, we got those punches from a creeper, and because they weren't very good work punches, it meant he had to be eviscerated. And look, once again, in terms of what we delivered here, it wasn't the best, and also because AEW was brand new, there are a bunch of fans who are like, I don't want to see stuff like this. It's too much like WWE. In many ways, this is what made that whole AEW WWE tribalism worse as well, because WWE fans would use this as a AEW sucks. So AEW fans then went and found WWE clips and went, oh yeah, well look what we got. It absolutely does go down though, and that's why wrestling does rule. You can throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, and then usually 9 times out of 10, you have another show right around the corner, so you can just try again. But yeah, in terms of getting into trouble, fans were really, really mad.
So recently we did do AEW's best moments as All Elite Wrestling turns 5 years old. So now, mostly because of the YouTube algorithm, we have to do the opposite. Please do remember to take this all with your tongue in your cheek, because wrestling never stops. Not everything can be great. I am Simon Miller. Let's go. Number 10, those really weird cameos. Or maybe they were meant to be proper roster members. This is why this is here. We still don't really know. But one day Chavo Guerrero was through the door, and then he was gone. Vicky Guerrero was there for longer, and she was a friend of Nyla Rose, and then she was gone too. Paige Van Zandt was hanging out with Dan Lambert's crew for a while just because, for some reason, we brought Eric Bischoff and stuck him in there. Now I could go on because there are a ton of these, but there was a good period where trying to figure out who was part of the company and who wasn't was impossible. It felt like all these names were just being pulled out of a hat. I don't want to be that guy, but there was a section of the audience that just didn't want to see him. And I wouldn't say it was all bad, but it didn't help at all, and afterwards, nearly all of these individuals spoke negatively about AEW. That's not what you want, it just gets people asking questions. Also, sometimes folk take it way too far. At the end of the day, it's just wrestling. Number 9, the Nightmare Collective. I don't really know what we were trying to do with this. With all the noise out there, I think we may have had multiple creative heads pulling in different directions. The moment which really baffled everybody was when Brandy Rhodes and Awesome Kong grabbed Mel out of the crowd and shaved her head. Now, who was Mel? Why was she here? Why did she do nothing after this? I think going spooky wooky so early in AEW was always going to be tough, as fans were so desperate for a WWE alternative. Then they felt like this was just doing the same. Let's not also forget that Brandy was way better when she was storming on the stage shouting, "Who told you this was open mic night, bitch?" That still makes me laugh. It's one of the best moments ever to happen in wrestling. We should have gone all the way with it. Number 9, the Ogogo Cody weigh-in. Sometimes a segment gets away from you, and that's what's happened here. It was really quite cool as Anthony Ogogo was getting his first proper push, and who better than Cody Rhodes? He loves these kind of feuds. As Ogogo was a former Olympic boxer, we let into that world because we did a weigh-in. Man, this did not go to plan. For whatever reason, it just went on and on for what felt like half the show, and as Paul White was there too, he tried to get the official weights and he couldn't do it. But the thing was, these were made up anyway, so why didn't he just stay a number? Instead, he played with that machine for what felt like an eternity. The match itself was weird too, as Rhodes won and then nothing else happened. We sort of just forgot about this. One way or the other after the fact, both Cody and Anthony have admitted this could have gone better, and they were correct. Cody Rhodes too Ever since, this has been nothing but a meme. Number 7, the women's division. At first, or maybe at some point in the middle. Nowadays, you have to give credit where credit is due. The AEW women's roster is stacked, and we've had some great stories, including the 9-month feud between Mariah May and Toni Storm. Can't say we didn't put some time into that. There was just a period where everything felt so slapdash and without direction, plus we didn't get the top stars clashing. We were always so close, but it never happened. Jamie Hayter versus Britt Baker, for example. That feud was teased for ages, and then we were gonna do it, but it didn't go down. We also fell into the bad practice of just putting one women's match on per show, and that never works. You have to build the whole thing up so people can care. It shouldn't feel like a novelty. Again though, fair play to the powers that be that did listen to the fans and getting us to where we are now. I would say in the latter half of 2024, it is actually very good. Number 6, Matt Hardy's horrible fall. So this is mostly because I was genuinely scared, but it's a timely reminder not to keep matches going if somebody could be hurt. It's wrestling and it doesn't matter. But during All Out 2020, Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara were having their street fight when they started to scrap atop a cherry picker. Why wouldn't you do that? I think the idea was for Matt to hurl Sam through a table, but when he came down as well, my gosh. Hardy smashed his head into the concrete floor. I'm not kidding, for a second it looked like he was dead. Thankfully he was okay, but this was no fun, and for some reason this entire feud was cursed. These accidents kept happening and the entertainment sort of went away, because in its place was pure fear. So just one more time, and I know I'm annoying, please forgive me, let's just stop matches if we can. Health and happiness first and foremost. And also, Matt Hardy has done it all. He does not need to give us any more. Number 5, December 18th, 2019. So yes, I did try to defend this at the time on ups and downs. I have gone back and watched it since, and sure, it's not great. We were just so early into the birth of AEW, I thought we should all give it more time. It is 2024 now though, and yeah, the closing of the 18th of December 2019 Dynamite as the Dark Order debuted did not work. I think All Elite Wrestling overly assumed how familiar their fans were with the indie scene. This was met with silence. The fact Evil Uno and co were meant to be killers also didn't help, as at the first hurdle it didn't click. Then there were those punches. I don't want to talk about that, it did get out of hand, but were they well executed? No, that's the end of the conversation. Mainly it wasn't what the audience wanted from a new promotion, although this is when Tony Khan took the creative reins. So at least there was a reaction, but sure, it has not aged great. Number 4, the Evolution Bomb, which didn't go off. I think we all know this wasn't ideal. The shame is that we forget the sheer agony Kenny Omega and John Moxley went through before this, but that's just how a story works. If the ending misses, it's all anybody's going to talk about. Hello, Mass Effect 3. In case you don't know, this was an exploding barbed wire death match, and yeah, just as the bomb was about to explode, it didn't. Instead, we just got some sparklers. Somebody had not set this up right. Poor Eddie Kingston also had to act like he was dead because he was trying to protect his best friend. And we should likely do another of these so we can make amends and forget about this one. At least everybody involved laughed at themselves afterwards, and when you do that, we could all move on pretty fast. I mean, shit happens. Deal with it. Number 3, Adam Cole versus Chris Jericho. And it's not even anything to do with them. It was AEW going way to WWE and not the good WWE. 2019 WWE. So once again, if you don't know, it happened at All Out 2023 and was billed as an unsanctioned match. Now put that in your brain. In AEW today, that means utter death. See Adam Page versus Swerve Strickland. And sure, Jericho and Cole kicked the crap out of each other when for no reason it ended, thanks to referee stoppage. I am not talking that cage match at All Out 2024 either, where Hangman tried to kill Swerve with the worst chair shot ever. Instead, Cole just punched Jericho with a chain as the referee decided this was too much and called it. It didn't work, it left people feeling confused, but once again it was meant to be an unsanctioned match. You also had a run-in from Sabu, and look, I don't like comparing them because what's the point, but I do get it here. Fans felt like this was a new version of 2019's Hell in a Cell between Seth Rollins and Bray Wyatt. That one is way worse, but nothing should come close. If you promise utter doom, we need utter doom. Or at least Dr. Doom. It is unfair on one level as they got judged more because they are massive stars, but they know this comes with the territory. Number 2, losing AEW Dark. A strange one, I grant you, and this is nostalgia really, even though AEW is only 5 years old. How the hell do we have nostalgia already? But given All Elite Wrestling was pitched as an alternative, having a weekly YouTube show where you could see the stars of tomorrow, and wrestlers kind of doing whatever they wanted, was awesome. Just felt so fresh, and fresh is good and clean. I understand why Tony Khan moved away from it, because he got an awesome TV deal from WBD, and it's called the wrestling business for a reason. We are just silly fans though, and there was this idea that the cancellation of Dark is where maybe things became a bit too normal, but chaos had been appreciated. I suppose we can compare it to a band finally making it to, I don't know, let's say Madison Square Garden. It is great to see. They never really sounded the same again. Now, once again, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I feel like I made a good point. Number one, Brawl Out. Some people will tell you this is the best moment in AEW history. It was a moment in time, and seeing CM Punk just go off at the All Out 2022 press conference was astonishing. When I first saw it, I thought it was AI. Nope. Over 18 months later, people were still talking about this, mainly because it was the beginning of the end for CM Punk and AEW. Tried to sort it out, but it was never happening. And come November 2023, he was back in WWE, and that was that. The reason it can certainly be viewed negatively is because it took focus away from the in-ring product. It caused serious issues backstage. Always remember that too. I very much doubt anybody involved was happy it went down. It just sounded miserable. The whole thing should have been shut down before it began, but hey ho, that's how you learn. Would have been way better if this hadn't have happened though. I'll just give it to you in nice sentence form. It was not great.
Many of the cliches about the wrestling industry being cyclical are true, but while the pendulum has unexpectedly swung WWE's way since Vince McMahon resigned in disgrace twice, AEW has undermined its own success by mastering the art of the cell phone. From the very beginning, AEW has gone all in, folks. Unfortunately, that meant the same flair, save for all-time great moments, has been afforded to some total stinkers too. So I am Gareth, you're watching WhatCulture Wrestling, and here are 10 times AEW buried itself. Number 10, Discourse takes a dive. The 2020 public fallout between Jim Ross and Brandon Cutler highlighted generational tensions in wrestling philosophy in general, but underscored AEW's ongoing challenges with public relations even during a creative zenith. Ross, still AEW's lead commentator at the time, criticized the overuse of dives in modern wrestling on his podcast, noting that all you guys go outside, you cluster up like coils, you stand there in a huddle, friends and foes together side by side so you can catch some leaping idiot going over the top. Who never wins with this move? Jim wasn't a fan, clearly. His advocating for a more measured approach seemed short on a measured appraisal, and definitely struck a nerve with Cutler, who fired back on Twitter using Ross words against him in promotion of a multi-man match he was involved in, posting that this Wednesday on AEW Dynamite 7 vs 7. We're gonna go outside, cluster up like coils, stand there in a huddle, friends and foes together side by side to catch some leaping idiot going over the top. Now, where have I heard that before? The exchange divided fans and talent, and undermined AEW's vitally important image of locker room unity and mutual respect. Instead of fostering dialogue, it revealed glimmers of internal discord, slightly betraying a brand that felt otherwise invincible. Number 9, Tony Khan's questionable victory lap. In the aftermath of October 2023's one-off Tuesday night war between NXT and AEW Dynamite, an infamous Tony Khan tweet about John Cena and The Undertaker drew reactions almost far more intense than the novelty ratings battle itself. NXT, bolstered by a ludicrous slate of some of WWE's biggest stars, outdrew AEW Dynamite in total viewers, boasting 921,000 to Dynamite's 609,000. In the face of some of the usual responses to such a result, Khan seized upon a historic statistic. This was the first time the likes of John Cena and The Undertaker had appeared on a mainstream show to less than 1 million viewers. Broadly, he framed it as a moral victory for Dynamite. It was a quintessential Tony Khan move in how it kept receipts but revealed them chaotically. AEW had, after all, held its ground in the all-important 18-49 demo, drawing .26 to NXT's .30. It didn't do badly at all. Well, this wasn't about the numbers, no, it was about the narrative. For many, it was something of a bleak grasp for a second win when the first would have sufficed. For Khan, the fact that WWE needed such names to fend off Dynamite's cameo on Tuesdays reinforced AEW's ailing position as a disruptor. While we're talking about NXT and AEW clashing, I want to know right now, what is your favorite moment from the AEW NXT Wednesday Night Wars? Let me know in the comments down below, baby. Number 8, not good booking. Rather fittingly, considering a golden era for All Elite Wrestling was starting to fade, it was during a Daily's Place New Year's Dash edition of Dynamite that an infamous promo exchange made end-of-year award consideration, even though both performers had left the company long before December. And out of nowhere, rivalry between Dan Lambert and Brandy Rhodes existed to set up lower mid-card tag team action with the Men of the Year and the Nightmare Family. But the uncomfortable tone and questionable execution of the fiery exchange ensured that only the talkers got any of the attention. Lambert was venomous as ever to Rhodes, calling her an ex-stripper and mocking her age. Brandy interrupted, calling Lambert a less talented version of Paul Heyman, and he offered her out for a fight there and then, leaning on his BJJ status. What a man. A mic drop followed, retorting with, "Oh, so you're a black belt? Well, I'm a black bitch. Let's go." The bizarre scene was immediately and brutally punctuated by the arrival of Dustin Rhodes to be the one to take a shot from behind by the heels, and by commentator Jim Ross. Blithely brushing it off, he remarked that this was not good booking, as the segment floundered and flailed to a nondescript conclusion. Hard to argue with him, good old JR strikes again. Number 7, nobody cares. The November 14th, 2024 edition of AEW Dynamite delivered a moment that would have once scanned as car crash TV for the challenger brand. But rather than reflecting badly on the promotion, it simply just served to bury the two people directly involved. Following a singles clash between Serena Deeb and Dr. Britt Baker DMD on the October 2nd edition of the show, won by Baker, Deeb emerged on the ramp a few weeks later following Baker's victory over Penelope Ford. Presumably, she was there to illustrate that she had unfinished business, and maybe even call for a rematch. Before she had a chance though, Baker as good as put a bullet in the story there and then. On camera and on microphone, she repeatedly and loudly said, "Nobody cares," gesturing to the quiet crowd. She referred to her as irrelevant before again drawing attention to the disinterested audience. The ordinarily composed Deeb looked momentarily flustered here, recovering only to deliver an uninspired retort that fell on deaf ears. It was all a bit awkward. What made the moment worse was the glaring lack of follow-up. Commentary barely acknowledged the exchange, with even experienced hands Tony Schiavone and Excalibur sounding like they didn't know whether to sell it as a transgressive slice of worked frustration or an ill-advised shoot. Instead of building heat for their feud, Baker's jab undermined Deeb entirely. And per this recording a month later, there's not been much verbal or physical follow-up. There's been a little bit of this in Baker's past too. Number 6, sandbagging the champion. Until an extremely promising and at times exhilarating 2024 in the AEW Women's Division, Britt Baker versus Thunder Rosa from the 2021 St. Patrick's Day Slam edition of Dynamite was the ceiling for the league. The hatred between the two simmered throughout the bloody war, elevating what was already a strong plunder match into something altogether more transcendent. As it turned out, there was more than a little fuel to the fire, and it re-emerged during an extremely questionable backstage promo a year later. Rosa had beaten Baker for the title in a good steel cage match 1 year on from their classic encounter, but had since experienced mixed fortunes as champion. In particular, there was some unflattering gossip about Rosa's supposed sandbagging of opponents, resulting in Baker dropping in on a July 14th backstage promo with Rosa and Toni Storm to hand out literal sandbags to the babyfaces. Oh boy. Already under scrutiny for inconsistent booking and a lack of comparable representation, the AEW Women's Division could not afford its top stars fueling public discord. As with the 2024 Serena Deeb jab, instead of fostering interest in a heated rivalry, the promo just undercut both talents. It shifted attention to whatever real-life beef there might have been, and the perceived bad attitude of Baker in particular. It was not a good look. If you right there are finding this list to be quite interesting, then tap that subscribe button and guess what? There is more where this came from. Number 5, is he sick? As the most experienced broadcaster during AEW's earliest days, Jim Ross's confusion and dismissal of Kenny Omega's Undertale costume during the Halloween 2019 edition of Dynamite showcased a notable disconnect at the commentary table, and indeed between significant figures within the company. Omega is and always has been known for embracing niche pop culture references. It makes him happy and he always looks rather cool, doesn't he? And here he chose to dress as Sans from the aforementioned game. It was a nod appreciated by younger fans and gaming enthusiasts alike, and explained in detail by Excalibur as Omega entered, and in such a way that tethered the outfit to the storyline dip in form the Best Bout machine was experiencing. But Ross's open bewilderment and indifference and arguable disdain, even after Excalibur's notes, created an awkward awkward moment on commentary. It extended beyond that though. Ross's reaction inadvertently highlighted a generational gap within AEW's presentation and gave bad faith actors an excuse to exploit a divide. While Excalibur worked to contextualize Omega's choice for fans unfamiliar with the game, Ross's "is he sick, is he mentally unwell" retort undermined the effort and attempt at folding storytelling into a Halloween choice. Number 4, Jon Moxley hates AEW. Right, so we've got a pro and con for you now. So right, pro, Jon Moxley, in attempting to lead from the front and with enough credit in the bank to do so, publicly reveals his frustrations with the creative decline of AEW and indifference from some of the locker room he perceives to not want it enough. Now for the con. The Death Riders leader made the same statements in a promo, clumsily attempting to establish his new heel stable during an era for the company where plenty of fans would actually agree with his stance. The comments, made both on television and in media appearances, felt like a departure from the steadfast loyalty Moxley has shown since debuting in AEW in 2019. Delivered with his trademark intensity, the statements immediately sparked speculation. Was this part of a larger story, or had he actually reached a breaking point here? On AEW television, the disdain sounded real, amplified by his gravelly delivery and the palpable tension in the arena. Fans, unsure whether to boo or cheer, met the moment with stunned silence. He doubled down in media interviews, assessing the leadership elements of his role in AEW, strongly implying that forceful change was the only way out of the slump. As he eloquently put it, "There's just a lot of noise in the world, and sometimes you really gotta do something drastic to really get everybody to stop what they're doing and look in your direction to make a point. And I'm absolutely not afraid to do that." Whether all an elaborate work or not, Moxley's statements highlight AEW's perpetual tightrope walk between on-screen chaos and backstage harmony. Number 3, airing the brawl-in footage. AEW's decision to show backstage camera footage of the infamous CM Punk Jack Perry fight on the April 10, 2024 edition of Dynamite was shocking by design. The footage, a grainy but gripping glimpse of the real-life altercation that rocked the company just minutes before their biggest show ever months earlier, blurred the line between storytelling and reality in a way few promotions dare to attempt. In that respect, it was absolutely bold. In others, it was an unnecessary airing of dirty laundry when the opportunity to simply let the situation lie was within reach. The clip was captivating on first viewing, even though it was fundamentally just a few seconds of human drama. Perry shoving Punk, Punk retaliating, and a flurry of crew members scrambling to break them apart. While brief, it confirmed long-speculated details about the incident that had been shrouded in rumor and spin, and brought back into the discourse by CM Punk's appearance on Ariel Helwani's podcast days earlier. But in the aftermath, fans were once again divided. Hooray! Supporters praised AEW for embracing transparency and leaning into its chaotic identity. Critics accused the company of exploiting real-life tensions at the expense of its locker room's morale. Ultimately, the segment embodied the too much information ethos that has both endeared AEW to fans and has on occasion exposed its greatest vulnerabilities. And going back to CM Punk, where else to head on that but to, yep, you guessed it, number 2, Brawl Out. Oh, you know the story, everybody knows the story. And to this day, over 2 years later, it directly and indirectly somehow continues to be the story. That's the problem, really. CM Punk's scorched earth tirade was a moment that saw AEW buried under the weight of its own dysfunction, with or without the man himself making it clear. The timing of his pre-planned rant was telling. What should have been a triumphant showcase for a promotion thriving on creative freedom became a chaotic spectacle that exposed cracks in its foundation. The unfiltered comments targeting the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Hangman Page weren't just inflammatory on their own terms, they shattered the illusion of AEW as the harmonious alternative to WWE. Punk, sitting beside a visibly stunned Tony Khan, ripped into his colleagues, calling them irresponsible EVPs, and dismissing their backstage conduct in a rant that felt personal, not performative. His "I'm trying to run a business here" remark stood out as particularly damning, implying that nobody else around him was. Worse still was Tony Khan's reaction, or lack thereof. Silent and wide-eyed, Khan's seeming inability to regain control spoke volumes here. AEW built its brand on freedom, but here it looked rudderless, with the owner letting his biggest star hijack the narrative, all while he munched on some muffins. Rather than showcasing AEW's strengths, the presser became a case study in mismanagement. It aired dirty laundry to millions, leaving AEW's reputation forever scarred. Number 1, Ric Flair, General. AEW's decision to work with Ric Flair in late 2023 epitomized the company's frustrating knack for undermining its own principles. What should have been a celebration of a wrestling legend's storied career became a case study in tone-deaf booking, as AEW leaned into nostalgia at the expense of its own credibility. Initially introduced as a surprise gift to Sting, Flair's arrival at Dynamite was met with mixed reactions, to say the least. The live crowd understandably popped for the moment, but less generous online discourse quickly turned critical. Flair's controversial personal history, including very recent allegations of historic sexual misconduct, made him an odd choice for a promotion that had prided itself on being forward-thinking and progressive. Furthermore, rather than enhancing Sting's retirement tour, the Nature Boy's presence dragged things into uncomfortable territory. Nobody wanted that in the Icon's last run. The decision became even harder to justify as Flair was positioned not just as a nostalgic cameo, but as a recurring on-screen figure. Tony Khan's assertions that AEW didn't need to pay for his contract due to the agreement with Flair's energy drink justifiably did nothing to quell the anger. As it all trundled on, the rambling promos and increasingly erratic presence clashed with AEW's core values, rendering Flair little more than an alienating distraction.
So let's just say it at the same time, my friends, these matches will change. And if you did join in with me, you're my new favorite person. Because that is just the way with life. One day we go to bed thinking X is the best match ever, then we wake up on Friday and go, damn it, I forgot about B. Oh my gosh, what about S? But since 2019, AEW has given us some amazing matches, so I, Simon Miller, thought it was time to sit down and go through some of the greats. And of course, we put them in an order. Otherwise, what would we argue about? So get ready and let's go. Number 30, the Young Bucks versus Eddie Kingston and Penta from the June 30th, 2021 Dynamite. So we are going to start by using a really weird comparison, but in many ways, this was AEW's answer to Steve Austin versus Dude Love from Over the Edge 1998. And what I mean by that is that if you go back and watch that WWF bout, it is just an unhinged blast of madness, with frenzy being the name of the game. It was also basically the match that re-cemented what a World Wrestling Federation main event was going to be, so suppose if you were going to bottle that feeling and kind of throw AEW on it, well, you get to this. I mean, by this point, the Young Bucks were so obnoxiously flamboyant that I think Matt Jackson had created his hat out of crayons, and the tag team had done such a good job with the fans, well, the crowd was just desperate for them to get some comeuppance. The in-ring action itself was just pure drama, with Flair and Danger added in for good mix, and during one spellbinding sequence, Nick Jackson just kicked Penta a lot of times. He then tried to bulldog him when all of a sudden Eddie Kingston ducked and backdropped Nick's head right into the top turnbuckle, and it made me all go wibbly-jibbly, especially because Penta was then back, and what did he do? He kicked him. Kingston quickly followed with a German release suplex when Penta hit the backstabber, and I tell you, the 1-2-ooh on that, Matt Jackson broke it up at the last second. Young Buck stooge Brandon Cutler then attempted to mace Penta, but because the masked man was able to slip out the way of Matt's grasp, Cutler essentially had a breakdown, so he stood there and continued to spray Matt with his legs shaking. I mean, that sounds ridiculous when I explain it, but I laughed out loud then, and I'd laugh out loud if I was watching it right now. This is when we had the elite hunter Frankie Kazarian 2 who came out to balance the books, when finally we got the big old package pile driver, a 1-2-3, the baby faces were victorious. So it was goofy, exhilarating, a little bit stiff, and just packed with carnage, and in many ways you could describe it as state-of-the-art action. If you're also trying to get somebody else into AEW, well, it ain't the worst match. Number 29, Toni Storm versus Mariah May from Revolution 2025. So a lot of people wanted this match to headline this pay-per-view for good reason. If you want to talk about some of the best stories that All Elite Wrestling has ever told, well, you gotta go to Toni Storm versus Mariah May. Of course, it ended up being Jon Moxley versus Adam Copeland that finished the show, but Toni and Mariah didn't care, because they stormed out there, no pun intended. My gosh, they rewrote the rulebook. What's most incredible about it is that it only went 12 minutes and 55 seconds. We had no time to indulge in melodrama here, and instead had one single focus. It was time to kill. I mean, you'll be able to see on the screens right now just the amount of blood that flowed from everybody's head. And I tell you, there's something about Toni Storm when she does do this. It always ends with a visual that you could describe as beautiful chaos. It also added a bunch of emotion to the match and made you feel something, dare I say it. And Mariah was right on par with this too. She essentially had helpless rage to her, and at one point actually shouted out, excuse my language, flipping hate you. Because the amount of minutes was so short too, there was just no downtime, and these two just wrecked each other like they actually had proper hate. It was essentially a proper Japanese deathmatch after a while, and let's not forget when it comes to American wrestling, you don't often see female talents engage in this, so it just meant you were hooked. We also do have to point out that it was based on months of build, a world championship, and characterization. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that's what wrestling's meant to be. This was flipping excellent. Number 28, FTR vs. the Young Bucks on the April 4th, 2022 Dynamite. So some people right now will tell you that they didn't think the FTR vs. Young Bucks series hit the expectations that were pretty lofty to begin with. It's more than fair if you do think that, but when you revisit all these matches in hindsight, well, I tell you, they are pretty flipping good. If you fancy doing that today, I would go back to this second match in the rivalry, because even though it was announced just days in advance, Matt and Nick Jackson, Cash Wheeler and Dax Harwood marched into Dynamite. I'm gonna be that guy, you'll have to forgive me. They created magic. I mean, aside from a lightning quick exchange of pins, we had Dax smashing Matt with a pile driver, and almost every single 1-2-ooh was met by fans going, well, how the flub was that not the ending? They had this down pat. It was probably relentless as well, because it was just you go, I go, we all go. And by the time the tag klaxon had gone off and everybody was doing a shootout, the Young Bucks somehow found another gear, and they were just flip-flopping all over the place. Nick even cut off a powerplex attempt by flooring Cash Wheeler with a top rope Hurricane Rana, and it's just that action, man. I don't understand how they kept this up. And also, just to break the fourth wall, they had all these moves in their head. How the flub did they remember them? The best twist unfolded just before the finish as the Bucks prepared to execute the Meltzer driver, because Dax Harwood caught a springboarding Nick Jackson mid-flip, and he blasted him with a Liger bomb. Once again, as the fans say, that was awesome. So if you are rolling your eyes at me right now, please just do go back and give it a second go. It reaches a level. Number 27, Eddie Kingston vs. Bryan Danielson on the October 29, 2021 Rampage. Eddie Kingston and Bryan Danielson from moment one until the end wrestled a flippin' stunning pro wrestling program. The dynamic they had was just perfect because of course you had Danielson, who was the vastly superior technician, but then you had the everyman in Kingston, who not only did fans just love, but he actually made you believe he was gonna kill you. At this point too, Bryan had made it very clear that he didn't view Eddie as a worthy opponent, so, well, he was acting like a smug and vicious prick about it. That just wound up Kingston, who rightly so took this as an insult, so all of a sudden we had a flawed hero. It's 2025, man. We all love a flawed hero. Every time they did get in the ring, it just got better and better too, but I particularly like this one from October 29, 2021, mostly because of Eddie Kingston's facial expressions. It goes from terror to fear like I don't give a damn, and even when he has been beaten to a pulp, well, you just don't think he's ever gonna give up. Of course, Bryan Danielson is perfectly on form too. There may never have been a better in-ring competitor. There are some real heart-pounding momentum shifts too, especially when all of a sudden Kingston takes his Phoenix down to fight back. And when his desperation truly sets in, he grabs the American Dragon and just DDTs him right into the mat. It also peaks perfectly because all the best noises come towards the finish. They don't outstay their welcome. And by the time we do get the 1, 2, 3, well, surprise, surprise, the fans erupt into a massive standing ovation. When you know, you know. Number 26, MJF vs. Darby Allin from Full Gear 2021. This was during a time when Maxwell Jacob Friedman had to keep reminding people, I know I don't wrestle that much, but when the bell goes ding ding, well, I'm going to prove to you that I'm pretty damn good. He was also making it clear that he was going to go for the World Championship because he ticked all the boxes, and he was the best heel that AEW had. On this night, though, he was taking on Darby Allin, a man who could also lay claim to a lot of what I just said. He was on the other side. He was a babyface. I think both walked into this match too knowing that you needed a good guy and a bad guy, so Darby just outwitted Maxwell each and every single time, to the point MJF got super flustered and tried to punch him right in the face. MJF also fell foul to the whole, well, I am in control, so I am going to start posing, and it's not like you had to wait before somebody else got their revenge, because Darby Allin just did that amazing torpedo dive and wrecked this dude. Once again, the fans went crazy. I'm gonna say this had big action set pieces. Sure, I don't know what that means, but if you weren't familiar with AEW and all of a sudden you saw these two brand new dudes, well, you're likely going to be interested. Of course, eventually, MJF went to use Darby's skateboard, and it was Allin that actually stopped him. This opened the door for MJF to get the cheat win, but both guys had made their claim. They were going to be massively important for AEW going forward. Number 25, Hangman Adam Page versus Will Ospreay from Double or Nothing 2025. So this one likely should be higher up the list, but I just thought it would be nice to throw a recent one in there for your brain. Hangman Adam Page and Will Ospreay basically proved to everybody they were the faces of the company, when they had one hell of a banger of a match. This had everything too, because of course they were fighting for the #1 contendership, and nobody actually knew who was going to win. I talk about this all the time in my videos, but if you can have a contest that is just drowning in jeopardy, you sit there the whole time scratching your head going, well, Will could get the victory, or maybe is Hangman. I don't know, I better watch. Keeps you on edge. In terms of the actual going-ons too, they just merged their styles brilliantly, and some of the near falls here too. I mean, you even had Hangman getting a 1-2 following big pressure, and that tied into his feud with Swerve Strickland. This one had the depth. The finishing sequence as well, when they were just reversing everything before Hangman did get the final buckshot lariat, was brilliant. What did they do afterwards? They did shake hands, and it all connected to what was going to happen at All In 2025. So when you can have a match of this quality, and it also speaks to the past and plans your future, well, you gotta mention it somewhere. And somebody actually told me the other day it's their favorite ever AEW match. Totally get it, man. It was pretty flipping good. Number 24, The Elite versus Hangman Adam Page, John Silver, and Alex Reynolds from All Out 2022. So a lot of people forget about this one, which is why I wanted to throw it in there. I suppose it was a different time for AEW given who was involved, but every single person came out here swinging. It was also during a time when Hangman Adam Page had finally left behind The Elite because he felt sympathy for the Dark Order, and given that those guys kept picking on his new friends, well, he was like, well, no, that's not cool. I'm going to come back and punch you in the tummy. It didn't just go down on pay-per-view either, because it was something to do. We built to this. And what I really like about it is that it didn't really strive for any spectacular creativity. It just wanted to get a good match done while also getting across the story. The sheer speed of the thing at the start soon morphed into a big fight feel, especially when Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page were drawn back together. And don't forget their tag team run. And really, that was the centerpiece of the match. When the Cleaner and the Cowboy did lock eyes, once again the crowd couldn't believe it. Here we go. It's a stupid thing for me to say, but it really was quite brave, given that it ended when John Silver pinned Kenny Omega with the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment. And let's not forget he did that when he reversed the one-winged angel. Sometimes you need the underdog to win, because the next time you have an underdog match, you can believe in them too. So while this may have left your brain, it actually did a world of good for AEW going forward. It ruled. Number 23, Rio versus Nyla Rose from the February 12th, 2020 AEW Dynamite. So this is what I'm talking about. We could probably redo this list in a week's time or get your opinions and nobody would mention this, but somebody has to. It's one of the best AEW women's matches ever. By this point, Nyla Rose just totally understood her character as the absolute monster, and there was only one way to play this. When you saw Nyla looking at Rio, the size difference was somewhat laughable. If you wanted to compare it to something in the most ludicrous terms, you could actually do it to a video game boss fight. You are the small person trying to take out the big person, so what are you going to do? You're going to chop them down like a tree. At 1.2, Rio just sprints across the table to nail Nyla with a drop kick, and at no point does Rose waste any of her bumps. In fact, she times them perfectly, and when she does get knocked down over and over again, you can feel the fever pitch in the room. Oh my gosh, Rio's actually gonna do it. Given that she was tiny too, at one point Nyla just chucked her from the top of the turnbuckle, and it kind of looked like Rio was half dead. And even the Snapdragon suplex that Nyla Rose took, well, it just works, man, because by that point, everybody was dialed in. From nowhere, Nyla then tried the one-winged angel, or at least a move that looked like that, which also made you go, what the flub? And as soon as Rio got back in control, she hit her foot stop 3 consecutive times, but flipping Nyla Rose kept kicking out. Rose then stormed through her with a spear and got the powerbomb victory for the 1-2-3. And that also made her the brand new AEW Women's Champion. This is an undercooked gem, and it deserves more love. Number 22, Jamie Hayter versus Hikaru Shida from AEW Dynamite Holiday Bash 2022. The women's division in 2022 was a long-standing conversation for the internet wrestling community, and that did make sense. Kind of felt like AEW was still trying to find their feet with it. That's why it made it even more confusing when Hayter and Shida went to the ring and produced this absolute barn burner. Why can't it just happen far more often? It really was phenomenal as well, because the thrill of watching a wrestler become invincible before your eyes was like anything else. That's exactly what Jamie Hayter did on this evening. She felt like the best wrestler in the world. The intent behind everything was deadly, especially when Hayter threw that lariat, and you can still see that today. Here, Shida continues to duck it over and over again, because she knows if I get hit with that, I'm dead. The sheer speed of her counters too are absolutely brilliant. It's a bit like wrestling tennis. You also had the fact that it was a new champion going against the old ace of the division, and at one point Jamie Hayter even went for a moonsault, and she totally missed. Shida then blasted her with a 3-count knee, and at the very last second Jamie does kick out. I mean, obviously we could probably mention that in every single match on this list, but when you get a near fall right, Well, it works. Cheetah also picked up Hater after this, but Jamie's HP was at 0, so she slumped to the ground. Actually, it was a massive ruse. She had secretly taken her med pack, she had tricked Cheetah, and when she smashed out a Death Valley backbreaker, I think some fans audibly gasped. They'd gone. I suppose the best way we can break this down is just calling it hard-hitting high action. That sounds like some kind of dumb tagline. And Jamie Hayter successfully retaining her AEW Women's Championship here did her a world of good. She had just come from an absolute war. Number 21, Chris Jericho versus Jon Moxley from AEW Dynamite, Quake by the Lake. So in terms of how many times these two have faced off, this is probably the best possible version. I mean, they had wrestled before and headlined Revolution 2020 when Jon Moxley became the World Heavyweight Champion. That had to be done, but for me, this one was better. It was when Chris Jericho had decided he was going to wrestle under his Lionheart persona for a while, and that got the people in instantly. I mean, let's face it, they were nostalgic for his pants. He also proved he could go back to his CMLL days as he busted out some technical lucha libre, and by this point, Mox just had his brand new character down. I mean, he was so violent, even if he had decided to call his heavy style Death Jitsu. I mean, whatever works. Arguably the most famous spot of the match is when Jericho finally applied the Lion Tamer to Mox and held it there throughout the commercial break. Luckily, I live in the UK, so I got picture-in-picture, and I can tell you, Mox's selling was incredible. He acted like he was about to die. It also gets super stiff towards the end, because I would imagine in the back both had gone, let's try to kill each other, and maybe this just blew everybody's expectations away. When you do that, it does come across as a better match. Moxie also kicks out of the Judas effect, and nobody expected that, which you learn from the massive pop. And the finish, well, was a little bit disgusting. Mox applied the match-winning Bulldog choke with such a grip that Chris Jericho actually went red. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it looked like he was going to die. And if the bell hadn't have sounded, well, that may have happened. Once again, I think that's the vibe they may have been going for. Number 20, Will Ospreay versus Takeshita from Revolution 2024. So sometimes when going through the best matches of 2024, I don't even bother to mention Will Ospreay, because really, you should invent an entire list for him. He has his match style down. It was also an advertised dream match at the time because Takeshita had been pushed as the new hero, whereas by this point, most people would be like, well, you know, William Ospreay is one of the best wrestlers in the world. It was just after Ospreay had signed for AEW, so fans were desperate to this. So Tony Khan was like, all right, you could have it at Revolution. If I was going to come up with another dumb term here, I would call it turbocharged athletic wrestling. And it's essentially what would happen if Street Fighter was real. Some moments are also impossible looking, and while I know that sounds totally over the top, I do not understand how Ospreay continually bumped for Takeshita's Germans without losing his head. If it had been like the medieval ages, this would have been a torture device. Williams' physical timing was also pretty much perfect here, but Takeshita just matched him beat for beat. And even though the Blue Thunderbomb Ozcutter still didn't work, because it is the least devastating move in all of sports entertainment, it looks so damn superb, and then Takeshita killed Will Ospreay with a crunchy. I suppose the only negative here was nobody thought that Takeshita was going to win, because again, it was Will Ospreay's first proper match under this banner, but sometimes things are so good, who the flub cares? Ever since then, Will has gone from strength to strength, and Takeshita has proven to everybody he's one of the best. I can't imagine a time this would ever be boring. Number 19, Hangman Page vs. Swerve Strickland from Full Gear 2023. So not only is this one of the coolest matches ever, you also have to call it one of the most disgusting. Now that's going to vary opinions, of course, but in terms of what these two set out to do, well, they couldn't have nailed it harder. Some people would even go as far to say that it was more grotesque and unhinged in a level rarely seen in American wrestling. Once again, I think that was the plan. On the off chance that you haven't seen it and you are learning about it first from me, here's just a few things that happened. They used a barbed wire wrapped steel chair and smashed each other. The cowboy, who was out for revenge after Swerve had invaded his home, stapled his kid's finger painting to his cheek. And then seconds later it happened again, and Strickland decided, nope, I am going to no-sell a staple gun. He looked like he was totally insane. Barry Barricade was also being involved here as they just slammed each other into it with no regard. And yes, the final one I will give you is that Hangman Adam Page drank Swerve Strickland's blood. There's nothing else I can say about this. If the image on screen doesn't do it for you, nothing is going to. Some people will say that it was a shame that Brian Cage, who was hanging out with Swerve, helped out at the end, which is not something you expect on pay-per-view. But it did mean that Strickland was able to wrap a chain around Hangman when it actually looked like he was trying to choke him. And honestly, the whole thing was pretty much disgusting. Wrestling is meant to be compelling TV, though, and make you feel something, and my gosh, this gave you all of the emotions. And given that this was a Texas death match, the rules were you had to answer the count of 10. Yeah, Swerve had just strangled the cowboy, so he wasn't able to get up. Nobody really won here and nobody really lost. They just went out there and did crazy things to each other. And now look, we are 2 years removed as me talking, and they are still getting mileage out of this. That's some pretty impressive stuff. Number 18, Hangman Adam Page versus Bryan Danielson at Winter is Coming 2021. They went 1 hour, because of course they did. This is the wonderful madness of Bryan Danielson. Who cares, it's TV? Let's do it anyway. It was also a way to try and cement Hangman Adam Page as an important champion because it's a tale as old as time itself. Let your guy fight and show true grit. Fans were warm to it, especially in the internet age. We all praise it after the fact. You could tell it was going to go long due to the moderate pace of where they began, and the build absolutely ruled. Danielson had outwardly questioned why we should respect Adam to begin with. I mean, what had he ever done apart from win the title? And so what? We've all done that. It carried on during the match too, because Bryan tried to control Page. He had the stamina, he knew the deal, he was not going to be moved. Danielson himself was just at the peak of his powers, and some of the counters are ridiculous. The timing of the thing couldn't have been more perfect, and Hangman, well, he gets it. He sells the whole thing on his pained face. He has never experienced anything like this before. When he did figure it out, Bryan lost it to the point he moved away from his own game plan. He started to jump from limb to limb, just hoping something would click. Can you believe it? It didn't. To Page's credit, he had it sorted by the end as he continually goes into dodge mode, but yeah, the time limit does hit that 60-minute mark, which just meant we were going to have to do it again on pay-per-view. That's pretty damn smart. Number 17, Will Ospreay versus Darby Allin on the 18th December 2024 Dynamite. There was a lot of excitement for this, I think just because both Will Ospreay and Darby Allin know who they are as wrestlers. If they both brought what they had to the table, good grief, we were in for some dinner. The sheer sense of urgency was nuts, which I suppose tied into the TV format, and of course Allin was fighting from underneath instantly. He had gone for a coffin drop to the outside, and the way his body hit the ring apron, which is the hardest part of the ring, I honestly don't know how he continues. Ospreay being the bigger man added to this, and when he went full William and increased his speed by 78 miles an hour, some of the chain attacks here. Darby matches it all by selling it like death too, and especially his back, he acted like he didn't have it anymore. The code red into the hidden blade has to be watched 67,722 times to try and work it out, which they do again with a Stormbreaker back into a code red. 1, 2, Ospreay made sure to draw the fans in with his usual, maybe I should do a Stars Clash to the outside, and then he just destroys Darby anyway. Again, you've got to watch the bumps here. They are horrible. We all forget this was a Continental Classic match too, so the win really did matter. The fact Allin surprised Will to get the points, that's just the best. Helped the whole tournament as well. Now you just didn't know what the other results were going to be. Number 16, the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers at All Out 2021. You can get as mad as you want, but the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers at All Out 2021 was quickly described as one of the best tag team matches of the modern era. I suppose recency bias could be a thing, but there was more to this, my friends. People were moved. The true genius was that on the one side we had the flashy moves and the whole you go, I go, we all go, whereas the second part was how real it felt. That sounds silly here and you should get mad at me, but go and watch it. It meant something to all four of them. Penta was on fire after selling emotional and physical pain, including seeing fragments of his face through his now torn mask, and somehow that just made him the coolest man on the planet. Do not forget that all of that came after a thumbtack sneaker to the face. It was such a 180 as usually Penta came across as unhinged, whereas now he was the vulnerable one. That then affected his brother Phoenix too. It was one for all and all for one. It worked on the fans, they sort of got disgusted by the fact the Bucks just wouldn't stop. And Matt and Nick sort of hinted at that too. Where is the line? And what if we've gone past it? It ends with the Lucha Brothers winning the tag titles and crying all over the place, so all of us were gone, water coming out of our seeing devices. As said, for a split second, this was just the most legit thing ever, and it hasn't aged a day, so yeah. It's one of the best no matter what. Screw time, absolutely. Number 15, CM Punk vs Eddie Kingston at Full Gear 2021. Do these two really dislike each other? I don't know. That's how good it was. It started years before in independent wrestling, as we were told, but the real shift on AEW TV is when Eddie Kingston was so vocal about being dicked over by Bryan Danielson, he accidentally interrupts a pre-planned CM Punk promo. Surprise, surprise, CM Punk didn't like that. The years of discontent between the two instantly came back to the fore, and their face-to-face on Rampage is legendary. I mean that too. If you like to watch wrestlers talk to each other like all of this is on the up and up, boom, this whole thing is fantastic. Eddie explodes with rage even though he starts sarcastically, but because Punk knows how to push his buttons, I think at one point Kingston actually tries to eat CM's face. That sounds dumb, but once more you have to see it with your own eyes. Everything Kingston does feels real somehow. He is special. It made sense too, because we all have work colleagues who we think are sanctimonious assholes, and others that feel like they're complaining for the sake of complaining. This tied into the match itself because it was just a fight, and dare I say it was perfect. Even before the bell, Eddie hit his elbow finisher, and then he laughed. He just wanted to hurt this guy. It then becomes a massive scrap, and it's so much fun. They are also two people that sell it all on their face, and it's so underrated it's ridiculous. Are you looking for something different but also totally real from your wrestling? Well, I've found it. It's unique too because it only lasts 10 minutes, and if nothing else, it is proof that modern wrestling doesn't just have to focus on one thing. CM Punk versus Eddie Kingston worked, and the joy is that it always will. Number 14, Santana and Ortiz versus the Best Friends from the 16th of September 2020 Dynamite. Here's some nerd chat for you. I recently worked a show with Ortiz and got to tell him how much I loved this match. So that was awesome. He was a good dude. Along with Santana and the Best Friends, they all did the unthinkable too. In 2020, when fans had seen everything, they managed to have a parking lot brawl, which actually made some think, what the flub is happening? I mean, it was the template for how a match like this should go. Even Mick Foley would have enjoyed this sort of brawling. All of the over-the-top moments are earned too because they spend so much time just brutalizing each other, and the parking lot is there to enhance, not just be something cool for the background. Another car is used as a jumping platform as Crimea River glass is all over the place, and I would call this creatively gruesome. It's just so gritty, and yes, it feels like four guys who don't like each other. AEW even managed to get some comedy in there as Trent's mum Sue picked up her boy before flipping Santana and Ortiz off and driving away. It didn't take away from it either, it enhanced the whole thing because it's genuinely funny. Let's also remember we did this in front of no fans due to the pandemic. Really is tremendous stuff. Number 13, Willow Nightingale versus Chris Statlander at All Out 2024. Do you know how we know this was brilliant? Because where it fell on the card made everybody facepalm and go, oh no, they've got no chance. And Willow Nightingale and Chris Statlander just saw that as a challenge. My gosh, they absolutely smashed it. You also knew this was going to be a classic within seconds thanks to the opening exchange. And I find it baffling this isn't a forever feud. We talked about Swerve Strickland and Hangman Adam Page, and they deserved such a program. Well, I think we should be doing the same with Willow and Chris. There's also a fact this was a street fight, so they took it to levels that would make you go, what the flub is happening here? Without wanting to sound like a dingus, it was just so damn violently beautiful. I mean, some of the spots were pretty damn creative. It's all about execution, of course, but we even had Willow smash a light tube over Statlander's head, so Chris just popped back up and drove Nightingale off the stage through a table with a spear. The bump off that one will make you cringe. It looked like Willow Nightingale was dead, and the absolute fire up from both guys towards the end. Let's just continue this as our catchphrase. You damn well think they want to win. There just wasn't one wasted spot or, oh man, I gotta get my shib in. Every single thing was positioned so it did tie into the finish. And when we got a 1, 2, 3, well, this place went nuts. We also do have to give a specific shout out to Chris Statlander, who I think made a debut here, because she got thrown crotch first into some thumbtacks. Probably just move on now. I don't care who you are. That hurts. Number 12, Bryan Danielson versus Ricky Starks at All Out 2023. So I am not trying to take anything away from Ricky Starks here, who did have some true highlights in All Elite Wrestling, but this one has been included so we can praise one of the best ever, Bryan Danielson. Because much like a Bret Hart from back in the 90s, Danielson was just able to look at any of his opponents, figure out his strengths, move his weaknesses to one side, and bring out of them the best match they've ever had. If you want to call Bryan Danielson a wrestling savant, well, that's correct. This gets even more interesting too, because on this night, Ricky was meant to be wrestling CM Punk. That did not happen for the reasons that you are thinking about, so when Bryan stood in at the last second, well, you kind of wondered what we were going to get here. Obviously, the fans were going to be annoyed because they wanted to see CM Punk. Danielson is so damn good. Well, I think we all forgot about it. The American Dragon had also looked through the card and realized they were going to have to pull out something big here. So really, and forgive my language, I think he essentially killed Ricky Starks. Because at one point, with Ricky suspended in the Tree of Woe, Bryan charged at him with multiple consecutive drop kicks. And well, you can see this for yourself. It looks like Starks' neck breaks, and his whole head is just bobbing there like a scarecrow. Given that it was a strap match too, Bryan Danielson just absolutely bloodies this guy, and I mean that literally. Both of them have the red stuff all over their skull. That just made Danielson feel even more intimidating though, as he growled at Ricky Starks, and yes, Rick played his part too, towards the end of this when he too found his second wind. Well, you just wanted to cheer for the guy. I also want to make sure I give a shout out to the facial expression that Ricky Starks pulled as Danielson did choke him out. And I understand that sounds terrible, but if the idea of such brutal matches is to make you feel something and give you some emotion, well, bravo Ricky Starks, bravo Bryan Danielson. If you walked in right now and called this some sort of elaborate torture porn, to be honest, I don't think I can argue it. Number 11, Jon Moxley vs. Wheeler Yuta on the April 6, 2022 Rampage. Now I understand this is a random one to throw in there, but there are so many unsung heroes in AEW. Well, let's use a list like this to sing about them, damn it. We can always change it tomorrow. Wheeler Yuta knows what he's doing. A lot of people call this the perfect television wrestling match when it did air in 2022, and that was mostly because Jon Moxley was on a tear and he refused to have a bad match. We all knew going in as well that Mox was going to rough up Wheeler because that was just their roles, but that's where the genius was. Old Wheels was clever enough to work out what was going on, e.g. John was going to kill him, but that this came from the fact that the Blackpool Combat Club, as they were at the time, had seen something in them. Hey, maybe they even wanted to recruit him. He decided to lean into that though, as he immediately flattened Mox with a suicide dive, and it wasn't even 2025. And of course, Jonathan loved that. He wants to get into a fight, and he just got the green light. Didn't really work out for Wheeler Yuta, because Jon Moxley then killed him, and really this blurred the lines. What the hell was the veteran now doing? Maybe he's out of control. It was so well delivered though, and Wheeler Yuta sold it so damn wonderfully. Everybody in the building, and you can hear this in the noise they make, starts to ponder, wait a minute, is Yuta actually going to win? Now he didn't, because it was Jon Moxley that had his hand raised, but Wheeler put in such a good performance and was so aggressive after the bell had rung, right to the point he got in William Regal's face, it sent one big, very obvious message: you may not thought I could have been a star, but I think I just proved you wrong. Now yes, ever since then I don't really think that AEW has capitalized on this in the way that they could have done. That's not what I'm talking about here. I am talking about having an idea and then executing it on the evening. And this one could not have been done any better. Number 10, MJF vs. Bryan Danielson from Revolution 2023. So once again, we go back to this idea that some people have about Maxwell Jacob Friedman, where they pretend he's not a very good wrestler. It's not true. He's a superb wrestler, as he proved on this night at Revolution 2023 when he got in the ring with the GOAT Bryan Danielson. It was an Iron Man match too, which means it does deserve extra plaudits, because as we know, we as wrestling fans sometimes will go, well, if they're going to go 60 minutes, I'll tune in at minute number 55, because it's only the last 5 minutes I need to care about. While I understand that if you chose to do that here, you were making a huge mistake, because the seesawing drama and the technical flair, well, it kind of blew your brain. And at one point, MJF blasted Danielson with a tombstone through the debris of a table. Just think about that for 1 second. There was also this electric tension, especially because nobody quite knew who was going to win. And even at the 50-minute mark, the fans chanted "Fight Forever." Now listen, I would have done that too. It's called mob mentality, but at the same time, some matches have to end. It was actually a silly thing to chant, because by this point, both MJF and Danielson were essentially dead. They weren't actually fighting, they were just selling. But that's what made it so damn emotive, there's that word again. When we did get to the final few minutes too, the score was tied 3-3, which made your heart do a double beat. And this is where Bryan started to go into his bag of holes, and he tried to submit the guy. What did Maxwell do? He sold that like he was about to be attacked by a ghost. The secret story that ran through the entire thing too was the fact that Friedman had taken frequent water breaks, and because he was so destroyed by the end, he was given oxygen to assist with his breathing. So have a guess what he did with that tank. He clobbered Bryan Danielson to win the match. It's hard to come up with an original Iron Man concept. These two went and did it. Number 9, Kenny Omega vs. Will Ospreay at Forbidden Door 2023. So you can put this at number 1, I would totally understand that. And really, even in 47 years' time, we will still be talking about Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay, because for my money, they changed the game. What I really want to focus on here is the theme of the video, and that is the near falls, because on 3 separate occasions during this Omega versus Ospreay war, they totally made you think that the other guy had won. It's some of the best 1-2 oohs you could possibly hope to see, and of course when that happens you all go, oh, and you kind of lose your breath a little bit. and that actually increases your adrenaline. You didn't realize. The first one is when Ospreay blasted Omega with the Stormbreaker, which AEW had done a great job of protecting, and I swear that Kenny waited until the 2.99 mark to move his leg to get it onto the rope. I mean, to this day, I don't understand how he did it. The second one is when Ospreay drilled Omega with the one-winged angel, and Omega kicked out at 1. So I basically lied to you there, because I was talking about 1-2 oohs, but when Kenneth did show this fighting spirit, well, I was watching this alone, and even I popped. I'm a weird guy. The real joy of it as well is that nobody kicks out of the one-winged angel, and even though it was Will Ospreay delivering it here, well, you just have that thought infused in your brain. Of course, Omega was also allowed to kick out of the Tiger Driver 1991, and yes, look, I know that was excessive, because Omega landed right on his head, but it really did draw you in. Ospreay got the win as well, mostly because Omega had got the victory in their first match over in New Japan, but these are 2 matches you should watch back to back. I'm not sure anybody else could pull it off in the same way. Number 8, Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson from Grand Slam 2021. I don't even want to talk about the moves in this match, because when Kenny Omega looked at Bryan Danielson and Bryan Danielson looked back across the ring at Kenny Omega, 15,000 people decided to cheer, and do you know what that damn Bryan Danielson did? He smiled. Kenny was then trying to hold back his grin, but he couldn't do it, and I felt it in my tum-tum, man. This is exactly the thing that I was waiting for. So even if they had played a game of chess after this, I would have given it 5 stars or 6.25 stars in the Tokyo Dome. Because why do we watch sports entertainment, man? Because we want to be entertained. It was also an incredible sight to see because people had been talking about these two locking up for years, and now thanks to AEW, we were finally going to do it. You can say what you like about All Elite Wrestling, but they were also allowed to approach it with their own styles, and that just heightened it even more. Of course, they then tried to kill each other because these two can't help themselves, and one of the powerbombs on the outside, I became Bryan Danielson's dad, I was worried about his head. I think that was Bryan's intent though, because he just sells his heart off during this. And yes, when he gets smacked in the brain with a V-trigger, he acted like his old injuries had come back to haunt him. I genuinely had a conniption. Speaking of that running knee too, the one that Omega hit down the rampway may be the best one that has ever been done. And the sheer creativity through this, well, I actually don't think anybody else could have come up with it, because you needed Omega's thoughts and you needed Danielson's ideas. They of course went to a draw at the 30-minute mark because they weren't going to be separated. And that's how you know this was quality. We all sat there and we were fine with a tie. That is not an easy thing to do. Number 7, Sting and Darby Allin versus the Young Bucks at Revolution 2024. So once again, I like my wrestling when it is filled with emotion. And on this night, Sting, Steve Borden, the legend, the icon, walked away from the wrestling ring forever. And man, I cried my eyes out like a baby. And I'm not ashamed to admit that. It was damn wonderful. Him teaming with fake son Darby Allin added to this too, because they had quite the bond. And we actually had Steve Borden's real children in this. It was like one big family affair. The Young Bucks, as always, just knew exactly what to do in order to make this feel like a massive deal. As did Darby. He climbed to a massive ladder and he threw himself through a sheet of real glass. You see the blood pouring out of his back instantly, and because everybody was dialed in, because again Sting was retiring, well, it does something to you, man. This is what it meant to the guy. The worry going into it is that Sting was such a nice dude, he didn't want to retain his tag team titles, and I totally get that. The tradition of the business is that when you do decide to give it up, you make sure you put somebody else over, but I, to this day, have not met one wrestling fan that wanted to see it, and you want to know why? Slap your head. Because we all love Sting, and we just wanted him to have one last moment. That's exactly what he got too, and on his wrestling report card, it will finish with a W. This, as far as I'm concerned, is the ultimate retirement match, and if you have a legend on your roster that you know is going to be leaving soon, and you don't follow this, well, you're totally mad. It was awesome. Number 6, Anarchy in the Arena at Double or Nothing 2022. Just look at Eddie Kingston here. He is wearing a Yankees top, he has blood all over him, he has a gas canister in his hand, and if I had told you this was a screenshot from GTA 6, you'd believe me, and I'm pretty sure that is the tick box checklist for a good wrestling match. These days we understand what Anarchy in the Arena means, but we weren't 100% sure back then, but it was the perfect coming together of serious wrestling and goofy wrestling, which is for life, and every single individual in this understood that, and I still can't believe they increased it to the level that they did. Calling it a plunder match isn't even fair because the characterization, the feuds that were delivered on here was ridiculous, and every single person in it deserves all the credit for taking this platform and throwing it into the sky. I'm going to go on record and say this match was special, and it was most definitely insane, but it was structured that way. I think AEW wanted to walk away going, I think we've just seen a brand new stipulation born, and my gosh, I didn't get enough of it. Bryan Danielson also decides just to punch people in the face and is happy to receive them back in his jaw too. And do not forget that we took ideas from DDT, Memphis, and even PWG to create this melting pot of 2024 action that you probably weren't going to see anywhere else. Witty, horrifying, entertaining, exhilarating. This instantly felt like the gnarliest, most awesome shit you'd ever seen in your damn life. And that's why AEW keep doing it, man. And for my money, it should become a yearly encounter. That is the level. Number 5, Bryan Danielson versus Zack Sabre Jr. at WrestleDream 2023. Let's tie this into sports. You know there are two teams rocketing up the league, and they both have a very similar style. So what the hell is going to happen when they do meet in the season? Well, they'll probably become Bryan Danielson and Zack Sabre Jr. That's a weird analogy. Now, this one had been talked about for ages because, of course, they were considered the best technical wrestlers in the world, and there was some serious expectation here. In order to meet them, Bryan and Zack were going to have to deliver something amazing. And of course they did it, and really they did it with a dragon screw leg whip. Because Sabre Jr. decided to give one to the American Dragon that was so disgusting, everybody thought he'd torn his ACL. Bryan Danielson was in cell mode. If you go back and watch this now, you will notice a few things too. They never venture outside, neither man ever scales the top turnbuckle, and damn it, there's no near falls. The whole narrative of the thing was going to be, okay, people do consider us at the top of the tree, so one of us is going to exert their technical brilliance over the other. And do not forget what the Wrestling Observer newsletter calls their technical award. It's the Bryan Danielson Prize. The funniest part to that is, do you know who's won it the most? Zack Sabre Jr. So all of this was just thrown into one big package as it became a tapathon, and who was going to slap the mat first. And I think that's one of the reasons I liked it. I wouldn't say this kind of style would be my chosen one if somebody put a gun to my head, but they were able to do it at such a high level, I was like, how can you even argue? It also stands out a mile in modern wrestling because most people do enjoy flippy dippy doo-dah. I'm going to be dumb again. I kind of go into a hypnotic trance when I do watch this. Don't understand how they did 70.8.9% of the things they do. Number 4, Cody Rhodes versus Dustin Rhodes at Double or Nothing 2019. So obviously, as I am recording this video, I don't know what the edit is going to be, but it would surprise me if the images that are about to come up on your screen aren't all colored down to black and white, because that's how gruesome yet brutal yet beautiful this match was. Now do not forget that Double or Nothing 2019 was AEW's first big pay-per-view, so they needed to tell lots and lots of people and wrestling fans this is the kind of thing that we are going to offer to you. In the end, they were looking at Dustin Rhodes, who was barely holding on, because he was drenched in blood. If you want to call this unsettling devastation, you can. It looked a little bit like he was gonna die. This was the intent though, because I think the Rhodeses had decided they wanted extreme emotions to come out during this, and it's just the intensity. I mean, even before Dustin was selling all over the place, it feels like it's do or die for him. My gosh, he took it literally. Cody Rhodes also proved that he could be a main eventer and hold up any company should you give him the tools. And let's just keep it nice and simple with 3 words. This was amazing. It's what gets me excited about Rhodes potentially being a heel in WWE. He is such a brilliantly cocky prick. Of course, you have the real-life connection as well that was Dusty Rhodes joining them together. And a few people said something silly after this, but I'm gonna say it too. AEW really did go and bring wrestling back. Number 3, Bryan Danielson versus Swerve Strickland at All In 2024. So this one could be a bit biased by me, but I was lucky enough to sit second row at All In 2024, and when Bryan Danielson beat Swerve Strickland for the AEW World title, damn it, I was crying again. I'm such a geek. Swerve deserves all the praise for this too, because he understood the assignment. We all want to make sure Bryan Danielson goes out on a high because he is going to be retiring in a few months. So what do I have to do to get him there? Well, it was just playing the most intimidating final boss ever, and one that Danielson could chop down. Remember when he gave him the Psycho knee and Strickland dusted it off? My gosh, it's etched into my brain. Bryan Danielson too is just the ultimate heart on his sleeve, guys. Even when he was doing his yes chants down the entrance, you could feel it. And the last 5 minutes to this, well, I'm going to say it again, and you're allowed to get mad, it is flipping perfect. Bryan also understands a simple part of wrestling, even though he's able to do the more complicated too. So he just had the piss beaten out of him here before he hit his big finisher 1, 2, 3. Then he brings his family in the ring too. I mean, if you were cold to this, I'd go to the doctors, you don't have a heart. I also think even in defeat, it raised Swerve stock as well, because everybody realized how good that guy was. And as for Bryan Danielson, who again was going to leave AEW and the world of wrestling shortly after, that man, nobody could compare with with this guy. He had proved it to every single last human. He's always going to be one of the best to do it. Number 2, Will Ospreay versus Bryan Danielson at Dynasty 2024. It's another one of those matches that when it was done, individuals rushed to the internet to write one very specific sentence: I think I've just seen the best match of all time. Now, it's not easy to watch, mostly because Bryan went and did it again like Britney Spears. Because he knew that we knew he had a history of neck issues, he allowed Will Ospreay to drop him right on his skull with the Tiger Driver. I can see it right now, and my gosh, I'm feeling a little bit oogly boogly. There's also some incredible false finishes in this that even when you know the result will get you, that's how dumb they are. And when they get to the final moments towards the end of the match, well, everyone just feels like a bigger deal and then a bigger deal and a bigger deal. I mean, you can barely keep up with it. There's also a sequence during this that may very well be one of the best in history, where each guy tries to go for a series of moves, and yet they arrive at a stalemate. It's like two of the best boxers throwing punches, but neither can land. And of course, this told the ultimate narrative: oh my gosh, they've studied each other. What the flub are they going to do? The sense of struggle was there for all to see. When it didn't work as well, Danielson went back to just picking limbs apart when he applied the yes lock. And the look on his face when he did do this, he was desperate to get the win. I think because he was worried that if Will Ospreay did escape, well, what else was he gonna do? If you can be bothered to, I would go and watch this, but just keep your eyes on the crowd, because there are a few people that are totally transfixed by this. I don't think they can believe what they're saying. I think you have to call it an all-timer and a cast-iron classic, and it was a match that was better, even though it had massive optimistic predictions going in. I mean, somebody called it transcendent, which is a little bit silly, but why the flub not? The fact it went 32 minutes 40, but felt about 12 also summed it up, and yes, it was Will Ospreay that got the victory here, and that's because Bryan Danielson understood the assignment. We've got to get this guy over, kid. No problem. Number 1, Kenny Omega and Hangman Page versus the Young Bucks from Revolution 2020. Now, one of the reasons everybody here at WhatCulture felt like we should put this tag team match at number 1 is the year. AEW in 2020, well man, it just hits different. And look, you can go on the internet right now and read some reports. It happened again. This is one of the best tag team matches in pro wrestling history. Now, do not forget the tag team wrestler over on the American scene had not been treated great for 2 decades. So the fact that AEW walked into Revolution 2020 and gave us 30 minutes of absurdly dramatic and well-worked action, well, who could get mad at that? You also had the fact that all men were deeply close and essentially helped create AEW, and yes, that was tapped into during the build, when, essentially, you also saw ugly professional jealousy. Because at first it was meant to be friendly competition, when all of a sudden Kenny Omega and Nick Jackson thought they felt something different, and the tension between Hangman Page and Matt Jackson, I mean, you just wanted them to kiss. There was real resentment there. They've also always been at the forefront of the modern hybrid style, if we dare call it that. So here, given they were on a major stage, they just thought they would execute it better than they ever had done. Here comes another stupid word. It was breathtaking. It's almost like they had a telepathy that existed between them. They went full Dark Knight as well because the escalation was impeccable, and Hangman, who was still furious about being murked off the whole time, just decided he would wreck Matt Jackson's back. And do you want to know why? It's because over in New Japan, Matthew had suffered a terrible back injury, and given that Page knew that, well, he was going to take advantage. What a horrible person. That in turn made Matt and Nick more aggressive, because how dare you do that to us? And in fact, we're going to hit you with one of your personal moves, and they took Kenny Omega out with the golden trigger. I don't have time to explain that here, but believe you me, if you were a geek, you fell on the floor. Kenny sold that too, because when he did kick out, he had a look of utter disrespect on his face. And let's just say you were an alienated, lapsed WWE fan, or even someone that gave up on TNA, this was the shot of the arm that you've been desperate for. Page even uses the one-wing angel, which is both a nod to his partner and also a bit like flub you weren't nice to me. And yet at no point did Kenny try the buckshot lariat. I think he was worried about the Cowboys' anxieties. Omega even started to foreshadow his massive heel turn that was going to come soon after this by also being the best babyface. Again, you got to see it to believe it. And I also think many people were surprised when Omega and Hangman held on to their tag team championships. Most assumed it would go to the Young Bucks. So given that we are at the end of this video, I can be super over top and tell it to you straight. Wrestling is meant to be a love story deep down at its heart, with a little bit of tragedy thrown in. And here you had the best of friends that had totally fallen out, and really that story is still going today. So this match is damn special, and we are proud here at WhatCulture to have it at number 1. That was unnecessary, and I shouldn't have done that. Before we do wrap up as well, I do have one special mention, because I think it should always be in lists like this. Thunder Rosa versus Britt Baker, lights out. Do not forget this went down in 2021, which kind of ties back into the Mariah May, Tony Storm stuff we were talking about earlier. It was so brutal and so bloody, a lot of people looked at each other like, damn, what is going on? So they always deserve their flowers, and who knows, maybe we will get the blow-off one day. But yes, I just wanted to sneak it in.
Right, so generally, at this moment in time at least, it does feel like AEW has done, well, everything. They've signed every hot free agent, they've promoted every single style of wrestling, and it's all been a pretty damn fun ride, hasn't it? There are many, many, many moments you have undoubtedly forgotten, which brings us to this list on that lovely positive note. Because I am Gareth, this is WhatCulture Wrestling, and here are 10 AEW moments you totally don't remember. Number 10, Wardlow's introductory vignette. At All Out 2019, a vignette was shown heralding the arrival of a Wardlow. This was, well, it was inexplicable. The upstart sports-adjacent promotion with no developmental system had just signed a new talent that had escaped the radar of even the ultra-hardcore fringes of the online fandom. The initial presentation of the character was jarring, framed in a scene that radiated 80s energy. Wardlow, complete with a Terminator-style scar and mandatory hot babe, beat the crap out of loads of people at once. It was a strange vignette, and a bit too grimly lit and Zack Snyder to resonate as the badass action movie short it was intended to be. Instead, it resonated as a drab, gritty reboot of an old-school Fed vignette. The Terminator character was dropped, unsurprisingly, and Wardlow instead debuted as MJF's Heater, in what was a far better story shot through the lens of pro wrestling. Now, I've got a quick question for you. What is your favourite wrestling vignette of all time? Probably not the Wardlow one, but you let me know in the comments section down below what is. Number 9, the Dark Order recruit Alex Reynolds via TV set. The Dark Order have sadly outlived their usefulness now, but at least they were useful at one point. That's something to be proud of in my book. In 2020 and 2021, the act was instrumental in presenting Hangman Page as an upstanding dude who'd rather lose alongside some well-intentioned geeks than win the wrong way. In late 2020, though, the Dark Order was entirely useless. They are spooky, and some out-of-shape extras follow them around wasn't a particularly great opening pitch. AEW soon pivoted to a Scientology-adjacent repackage. This enabled the use of the dreaded and supposedly banned invisible camera, in a strange vignette that undermined the sports-based promise of AEW's early PR. The Beaver Boys, jobbers in AEW's early phase, were naturally preyed upon by the Dark Order. The idea itself wasn't completely terrible, but the execution was absolutely criminal. John Silver and Alex Reynolds were recruited through a television set on the December 11th Dynamite. The Dark Order communicated to Reynolds with the apparent use of magic. Either that or they were hackers, the Ministry of Darkness, or Retribution. Either way, it was hardly battle art, was it? Number 8, Chris Jericho teases the arrival of Marty Scurll. Prior to his naming and the speaking out allegations, Marty Scurll was a wanted man in the wrestling business. His Ring of Honor contract was set to expire in November 2019. Ring of Honor, drifting into the abyss, wanted to retain his services. WWE, nowhere near the abyss but intent on heaving the competition into it, also scouted Marty's services. AEW wanted him allegedly as the leader of the Dark Order, in what at the time would have been a very neat continuation of the storyline in which he was left behind on being the elite. This all felt like his obvious destination. AEW seemingly thought they had him too, as teased on the December 4th Dynamite. Then AEW World Champion Chris Jericho unveiled his lexicon of Le Champion, on which he revealed the names of men he refused to wrestle in what remained of 2019. A means of building the anticipation ahead of his match with Jon Moxley folded into a comedy bit. Jericho was soon interrupted by Jurassic Express, and the timing of said interruption was notable. Jericho, cued up by the very first note of their theme, suddenly said Marty and then intentionally trailed off, knowing it was a natural time at which to do it. The idea was to trust AEW's super dedicated base to pick up on the Easter egg. Such a match never happened, of course. Before he was disgraced, Scurll re-signed with Ring of Honor as talent and head booker. Bullet dodged, you could say. Number 7, CM Punk's budding friendship with Hangman Page. You definitely remember what happened between CM Punk and Hangman Page. I mean, how could we ever forget? You could argue, in fact, that AEW, almost 2 full years later, is still reeling from the fallout. It hasn't quite felt the same since, has it? And even in storylines, the spectre of CM Punk haunts everything. The misfire of an ongoing authority figure storyline, so forced that Dax Harwood's rah-rah speech was heckled on Collision recently, was driven by the Young Bucks feeling aggrieved that Jack Perry was punished for his role in the infamous backstage fight at All In London. What you may not remember is that CM Punk, early in his Happy to Be Here run, seemed to want to actually befriend Hangman Page. Punk, as the only happy poster on wrestling Twitter, put over over a returning Hangman Page as he claimed victory in the Casino Ladder match on the October 6, 2021 Dynamite, tweeting Cowboy S-word. He didn't say S-word. A month prior, after a Dynamite taping, Punk and Page serenaded the crowd with a rendition of Take Me Home Country Roads to send them home happy. Punk also, in January 2022, asked Page on Twitter if he could borrow his chaps. It was all so lovely. Page didn't respond to these friendly overtures, obviously. He eventually blamed Punk for freezing Colt Cabana out the company instead. But did all of this happen because Punk simply felt spurned? We'll probably never know, will we? So moving on, number 6, early experiments with a different presentation. AEW turned into a sports entertainment promotion so gradually that you barely even noticed. For example, on any given week, you'll now see a wrestler appear on the big screen in order to interrupt an in-ring promo. Recently, Sky Blue did precisely this in order to set up an impromptu match. Something else that WWE might as well have patented against Mercedes money. How did Sky do this? By magic? Did she commandeer the production crew? Or is this just something that, while illogical, has always happened in wrestling, so why shouldn't AEW do it? Probably that one. AEW, in a bid to differentiate itself from WWE, used to be far more careful with this sort of thing. In contrast, Sammy Guevara once did something similar in the build towards Full Gear 2019, except it at least made slightly more sense since he was known for his vlogs back then. When making saves, AEW would resist the temptation of blasting a wrestler's entrance theme when they made the save for the sake of an easy pop. And the early wild brawls between the Elite and the Inner Circle felt far more realistic and lively and spontaneous as a result. Oh, I wish those days were back. Cheers for checking out this WhatCulture Wrestling video today, my friend, and if you're enjoying what you're watching, then hit that subscribe button down below for more of this sort of stuff in your life. Number 5, subverting the TV format. AEW once actually tried to subvert the TV format on occasion. The idea was to disassociate fans from WWE's uber-produced, fake-feeling world. Back in 2019, WWE's format was heavily convenient. Everything fit just all too neatly into the 3-hour runtime of Monday Night Raw, and nothing felt remotely realistic. To combat this, on the 4th ever episode of Dynamite, Jon Moxley and Pac went to a no contest when the broadcast went off the air. This wasn't a production botch. This was AEW's attempt to put over the idea that TV time remaining was a real possibility, ensuring that future televised main events would be wrestled and received with more urgency. Back in the days when the rankings were in place and actually mattered, the finish also served a dual purpose, as Mox's failure to win prolonged his quest to become the #1 contender to Chris Jericho's world title. Along similar lines, Orange Cassidy in 2021 defeated Jack Evans in picture-in-picture. AEW attempted to condition fans to stick with the action. AEW matches might end even when it is inconvenient to the viewing experience, all to add a more realistic tenor to the show. Ultimately, these devices didn't really matter, and nor did they continue, but it was still a refreshing attempt all the same. Number 4, another cool detail. As mentioned, AEW sadly feels like just another sports entertainment company these days. Just consider this. Against an ugly LED backdrop in front of fans who are often quieter than they once were, the real founder of the company appears as an on-screen authority figure in the midst of a power struggle. In the meantime, a recent #1 contender was handed the shot because some heels with power favored him. Several acclaimed internet darlings struggle for TV time and always seem to end up losing to the established over-familiar old guard. In isolation, all of that describes Vince McMahon's WWE at various points over the 21st century. In 2024, though, it also describes All Elite Wrestling. What is happening? It wasn't always like this, was it? AEW used to consistently sprinkle in tiny, loving details in order to present itself as the promised sports-oriented product. Mostly inconsequential details, sure, but ones that nonetheless enhance the old feeling. In an example of a cool trope AEW hasn't revisited nearly enough, when a Hook FTW title defense once lasted mere seconds on Rampage, Buddy Matthews vs Serpentico, a standby match, was added to the Rampage lineup in August 2022. AEW should do this way more often, especially as the show in recent months has developed almost unconsciously a more sports entertainment feel. Number 3, Cody and Chris Jericho's authority figure storyline. Cody and Chris Jericho built their rivalry well before Full Gear 2019 on the very first entries in the AEW broadcast canon, the Road to Double or Nothing 2019 series. Curiously, given AEW's early "we won't do what WWE does" mission statements, they did so through the vehicle of an authority figure storyline. This was a very, very WWE thing to do by the company that marketed itself as the WWE alternative. In essence, Chris Jericho played the big-headed top star with a list of egotistical demands that drew Cody's ire. This device felt incongruous to the idea that the key wrestlers had set up a wrestling company precisely to get away from such BS on-screen dynamics. And even as a new twist on it, this was still a bad idea. The execution was actually really good in and of itself, though. Chris Jericho was magnificent as as the petulant a-hole who received every fair Cody decision as a slight. He even hilariously referred to Cody as Cody Khan. The menace of his spiraling ego was very amusing, but AEW dropped that thread, and really, thank God for that. Absolutely nobody needed the stars to be drones reduced within a network of power. Number 2, the original shoot fight. On the AEW Dynamite broadcast on September 16, 2020, Thunder Rosa defended the NWA Women's title against Ivelisse. Ivelisse did not fancy selling and sat stone-faced in a hold. She looked like she wasn't allowed a ride in the supermarket trolley, and in an ironic punishment decided to simply not move. It was a feisty encounter that manifested with both good, hard-hitting wrestling and some stiff shoot blows. It was a super rare return of the political awkwardness once thought lost to a generation that wasn't terrified of reprisal. But it also was not actually the first shoot fight in AEW history. That, honor belongs to B. Priestley and Sadie Gibbs, who had All Out 2019 went off script in an incident informed by residual social media drama. Gibbs in January 2019 left a tour of Japan through bereavement. Will I Can't Believe It's Not a Premier League Footballer Ospreay then buried her for it. Ospreay's then girlfriend B pounded Gibbs in the midst of the match, yelling stupid over and over again, channeling her inner Randy Orton. Gibbs then floored her with a gorilla press drop, but B just no-sold it. Not in a pop-up fighting spirit kind of way, but in an F-off I'm not selling for you kind of way, and immediately eliminated her. And the fight, before it was broken up, also threatened to explode backstage. So now you know, or remember, or whatever. Number 1, the fact that December 18th was mostly a damn good show. December 18th sends a chill down the spines of most AEW fans. A feeling not unlike losing a derby, and this was almost literally the case, since a fabulous NXT show defeated Dynamite in both overall viewership and the key demo. Before the Dark Order drew cricket by destroying the Elite though, here's what actually happened on the December 18th episode of AEW Dynamite. Kenny Omega and Hangman Page lost to the Lucha Brothers in, a few glaring botches aside, a tremendous TV wrestling match. Cody and Darby Allin defeated the Butcher and the Blade to set up their second great singles match and advance the Cody vs MJF feud. Chris Jericho went to a time limit draw with Jungle Boy in what was probably a nicer endeavor than it was a great wrestling match, but still an attempt was made to get an emerging talent over. Chris Statlander defeated Britt Baker in a measure of AEW's meritocracy. The act that got over went over the act that did not. And in a main event that ruled before the post-match bed crapping, SCU defeated the Young Bucks in a cracking underrated sprint. What a damn show that was. Now yes, having a creeper kick Kenny Omega's ass was a disaster, as was the hokey fake blood of the closing shot. And the Dark Order becoming AEW's big bad was so awful that Tony Khan was pressured into taking control over the creative. But still, the show was never ever WCW 2000 bad, people. Do not forget that. Whether it involved icons performing rather embarrassing bumps, top stars refusing to play ball, or the organization not doing what was right on the night, there have been a number of shocking, awkward, or humiliating incidents the AEW presidents would prefer you to forget ever happened. But they all very much did, so let's talk about them. I am Gareth, this is WhatCulture Wrestling, and here are 10 things Tony Khan wants you to forget about AEW. Number 10, the controversial exits. While the likes of Cody Rhodes and Jade Cargill seemingly left AEW on good terms, the same could not be said for some of the other talents that ultimately left TK's organization. Take Big Swole for example. In the wake of leaving the company in November 2021, the wrestler claimed on her call-in show that the reason she didn't re-sign with AEW was down to the fact the promotion lacked structure or diversity. And how did the billionaire boss respond? By defending the company's diversity on Twitter, before bizarrely telling the world he let go of Swole because he didn't think her wrestling was good enough. Very nice. Then you have Ivelisse, who took to social media to accuse a coach of mistreatment and claim Thunder Rosa, her opponent during that infamous September 10, 2020 Dynamite encounter, slandered her name after her release in April 2021. And lastly, you have the latest controversial All Elite exit Khan would like to move on from sharpish, that being CM Punk's firing in September post All In 2023 backstage madness. Releases and exits happen in wrestling, but these are just a few of the uglier departures the AEW president would like his fans to forget about as swiftly as possible. Number 9, the worst punches in wrestling. What should have been a moment that forced the All Elite audience to take this new villainous Dark Order unit seriously towards the end of the December 18, 2019 Dynamite soon turned into one of the most embarrassing beatdowns in wrestling history. And we were only 2 months into weekly All Elite programming. Lovely. After SCU's Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky got the better of the Young Bucks, a bunch of not exactly intimidating creepers surrounded the ring as silly purple lighting washed over the teams. The crowd were already pretty unimpressed by the lame and uninspiring attack about 30 seconds in, and not even the arrival of Kenny Omega and Cody and Dustin Rhodes could shoot some excitement into the flat brawl. Then it happened. One of the unknown masked attackers began throwing the sort of dreadful right hands that accidentally added fuel to the all amateurs wrestling fires. The shot missed Dustin by a country mile. Even 4 years later, you'll struggle to find a more embarrassing All Elite angle, or anyone in the company referencing this terrible TV conclusion. Number 8, many a botched debut. It does seem that for every marvelous All Elite arrival, Tony Khan finds a way to completely drop the ball with a new face in his company on night 1. There was that time AEW introduced a brand new giant into the mix in the form of the massive Satnam Singh, by blacking out the arena and throwing the lights back up to the sound of crickets as the big lad decked Samoa Joe. Andrade El Idolo experienced a similarly underwhelming first night on Dynamite back in June 2021, awkwardly showing up as Vicky Guerrero's new client. And that lasted long, didn't it? Remember when Matt Sydal popped up at All In 2020 as the Casino Battle Royale's Joker? Well, TK probably hopes you don't. His slipping Star Press debut was just about overshadowed by another awful fall on the night. Oh, we'll get there. Cries of "Who are you?" as the Butcher and the Blade crawled into the AEW system, and Miro showing up as a video game obsessed best man are also just a few of the other times Tony got it badly wrong with an AEW newbie. Now I've got a quick question for you. What has been your favorite AEW debut of all time? Let me know in the comment section right down below. Number 7, MJF has left the building. Admittedly, it does seem like AEW are finally finding a way to fold this real-life drama into a storyline, with Wardlow finally realizing MJF was the person responsible for destroying all the momentum he'd built up heading into Double or Nothing 2022. However, that still doesn't change the fact that the controversial events that set the stage for Maxwell Jacob Friedman's explosive Dynamite pipe bomb and summer hiatus last year are the sort of awkward moments TK wishes never happened. Before Maxwell decided to shockingly no-show a meet and greet on Double or Nothing weekend, the star was said to have butted heads with his boss over his contract when compared to the deals handed to other top stars in the company. Sure, Khan was ultimately able to convince Friedman to get in the ring at the pay-per-view and put his former bodyguard over, and he even managed to get a viral work shoot promo out of the Salt of the Earth before he eventually made an epic all-out return. But the fact Maxwell had to no-show a fan event to eventually score himself the raise he deserved, being put on more than $1 million a year according to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, wasn't the best look. Number 6, the terrible mattress bump. This entry isn't taking anything away from the very real physical punishment each and every performer likely experiences whenever they decide to step in between the ropes, or enter a cage on this occasion, and a company doing all they can to protect their workers when they're trying to execute outrageous spots should be saluted. However, if you can't pull off a jaw-dropping moment safely without it looking like a bloke simply jumping off his wardrobe and onto his bed, the wise call would probably be to just move on and try something else, or maybe just not film it in close-up. Sadly though, Chris Jericho, MJF, and Tony Khan clearly didn't get those memos. Feeling they absolutely needed to chuck Le Champion off of the blood and guts structure for the story they were telling back in 2021, the company created a landing area that would ensure a safe fall for the veteran. The only problem was that the way the climactic fall was shot made the entire impact zone look like little more than a crash mat, some empty boxes, and a bit of pretend cardboard steel, which is exactly what it was. The idea was to fool fans into believing Jericho had just been mercilessly sent to his doom, but the way AEW decided to stupidly film this brave fall completely undermined what had been a pretty brutal match up to that point. Number 5, all of the non-Punk Elite backstage drama. Away from all of the backstage mayhem involving Phil Brooks and the Elite in AEW, oh don't worry, we'll get there, there have been a number of other rather regrettable behind-the-scenes incidents that have grabbed the wrong sort of headlines over the last few years in particular too. Sammy Guevara's high-profile altercations with Eddie Kingston and Andrade El Idolo last year definitely rank as two of the more embarrassing examples of TK struggling to keep the drama in-house. And for the longest time, the real-life heat between various talented performers within the All Elite women's roster was actually more intriguing than the stories they were telling on screen. For comparison, it's rare to hear of any huge blow-ups going on in the locker room over in the world of sports entertainment, whereas AEW seemingly couldn't go a week without a star firing a shot at their colleague before clashing backstage in 2022 alone. Khan will likely be praying the Punkers' collision with Jack Perry at All In 2023 sits as the the last moment of behind the curtain madness for some time now. Or maybe he'll just book Guevara vs Kingston for the banter in 2024 and invite even more hilarious chaos. Number 4, the all-out 2020 Matt Hardy incident. The fall that took the attention away from Matt Sydal's awkward arrival at All Out 2020 is a moment that should have taught the company a rather painful lesson. As Matt Hardy went to war with Sammy Guevara that night in a broken rules match, the pair eventually found themselves on top of a scissor lift backstage. Not quite hitting a spear off the machine in the way they had planned though, Hardy ended up being very much broken when the back of his head smacked off the concrete floor. Hardy was clearly not fit to continue, but instead of calling off a match that fans weren't exactly desperate to see conclude anyway, the veteran was allowed to complete the contest, and AEW received a justifiable amount of backlash for their failure to properly intervene. Luckily, the company did respond quickly when Hangman Adam Page was knocked out in his match against Jon Moxley a few years later. But the poor way they handled the latter's recent concussion on Dynamite proves that there's still some room for serious improvement when it comes to wrestler safety in these sort of scary situations. Number 3, Dan Lambert and Brandy Rhodes' dreadful Dynamite promo. The days of Dan Lambert shooting from the hip on the AEW roster feel like a lifetime ago, and that's probably how Tony Khan would prefer it to stay. Now, there were a few highlights in there for sure, like that time he took a nasty Lance Archer blackout in the summer of 2021. But whoever decided it would be a good idea to throw the American Top Team founder into a promo battle with Brandy Rhodes should have really been the one on the receiving end of the Murder Hawk Monsters finisher. Both figures were generating all kinds of go-away heat at the time, with not a single soul in Chicago wanting to sit through the unlikable pair's shots and kayfabe-killing retorts. It was uncomfortable to watch, offensive at times, and was all seemingly done to welcome back a Paige Van Zant, who ultimately ended up doing very little of note after the heelish Lambert's mate beat up, another heel. It was yet another low in the consistently ugly Lambert era of All Elite Wrestling, and a mess the company won't be inviting you to relive on YouTube anytime soon. Number 2, Pac and Adam Page's cancelled Double or Nothing 2019 fight. AEW's first ever press conference in early 2019 brought with it the announcement of 2 rather exciting new additions to the ever-growing roster: the Elite's Hangman Adam Page and the bastard Pac. The studs ultimately ended up coming face to face during that very event, leading to a hotly anticipated match between the lads being scheduled for the inaugural Double or Nothing pay-per-view. What should have been one of the first of many mouth-watering All Elite blockbuster fights, however, soon turned into one of the company's earliest awkward moments. It also led to a piece of company history TK would no doubt love to erase if given the chance, with Pac reportedly not being happy to do the JOB for the Hangman due to him being the Open the Dream Gate champion for Dragon Gate at the time. The bout was eventually pulled from AEW's first pay-per-view event. Those creative differences then resulted in the first official match in All Elite history actually going down on a WrestleGate Pro show over in the UK, and ending in a DQ. You'll love to see it. Number 1, Brawl Out and the Punk saga that followed. Watching the punker swing a sledgehammer at his workplace repeatedly during All Out 2022's infamous press conference was surreal. But perhaps even crazier was the sight of Tony Khan helplessly sitting on and allowing the best in the world to shoot from the hip at his EVPs and biggest stars as he munched muffins with a ripped up triceps. This was merely the beginning of an AEW changing evening, however, as the Elite and Punk would clash backstage not long after, leading to Khan having to suspend all involved and strip them of their gold. A terrible situation, one that could have possibly been solved by demanding all involved sit down in a room and settle their differences, only got more toxic in the months that followed. Khan's attempts to keep his top star and the lads who helped him start this apparent revolution happy by keeping them as far away from one another as humanly possible did not work out, and that failure to take decisive action earlier kept the company under a dark cloud for much of 2023 before Punk's controversial exit in September. TK will want his fans to remember 2023 as the year he crammed tens of thousands into Wembley and debuted another weekly 2-hour TV show, not as the year he failed to handle a Punk saga that threatened to undo all of the Elite work that had come before it.
You're not going to believe this, but sometimes wrestling is violent. I know! AEW is also a constant offender of this, so I've decided we shall not let them get away with it anymore. Because of course they shall listen to a random bald guy on the internet. But hello, I am Simon Miller, I'm also a buffoon. And that's right, strap yourselves in, because we are about to talk violence in All Elite Wrestling. Number 10, Swerve gets daddy ass. That was not the best way to say that. I mean, go and say that to somebody today who does not watch pro wrestling and they will look at you like this, but it does tie in to the rise of Swerve Strickland. Because when he did join AEW in 2022 and started a tag team with Keith Lee, I don't think anybody expected him to get to where he did do and more fool us. You look at Swerve now, he was always destined for greatness. Of course, the story between him and Keith was, can they coexist? Because pro wrestling loves that one. And before long, given we did have two teams, they came up against the Acclaimed and Daddy-ass. As Matt's camp for Anthony Bowens and Billy Gunn did enjoy scissoring though, Strickland decided, I wonder if I could kidnap Billy Gunn and, torture him just a little bit. And because the police never get involved in pro wrestling, that's exactly what he did. But at one point, we even insinuated that Strickland had used pliers to rip off Billy's fingers. I think you should do that. Now, we can't have gone through with this because, of course, Bill did still have his hand the next week, but you were meant to left thinking, Swerve Strickland is totally screwed up. So it was almost the thought of violence rather than violence itself, which sometimes can actually be more effective. But don't worry, we are going to talk about Swerve later. He's definitely done visual violence. But still, it was a nice place to start. Number 9, Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa changed the game. Women in a hardcore match. However will we continue to exist as a society? Because this is the internet, I'm being sarcastic. Really though, we all need to grow up because what's good enough for men is obviously good enough for women. And if you need proof, go and watch this. This was a proper lights out unsanctioned match back on Dynamite in 2021. And look, yes, sure, in Western professional wrestling, females doing this did cause some mixed reactions, because some individuals had never seen anything like this before. They're also the first women to main event on Wednesday night, and it gave us so many iconic moments. Look at this image. If you can look at that and not feel a little bit oogly boogly in your tum-tum, you're a stronger human than I. So as you can tell, it was filled with blood, but also it was so violent. But listen, man, it was a proper feud, and if you wanted to sit down and go, wow, Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker really hate each other, Exhibit A. Both really deserve praise for what they did put themselves through here, because they did move the conversation forward. Ever since this moment, AEW has opened the door, and that's what we should always do. And if it's not for you, just don't watch it. But should they have the opportunity, you bet your ass. Number 8, Cody's 10 whips. We did it again. The violence in wrestling isn't just about the act of violence. Sometimes it can be about the emotion too. Cody Rhodes and MJF really understood this as well, so after MJF had cost Cody Rhodes the AEW World title, which meant he could never challenge for it again, Cody decided, I am going to get my revenge on you, Max. And if he wanted to do that, he'd have to go through the trials of MJF. And one of these got so out of control, because Maxwell said, all right, fine, I get to whip you 10 times with a weight belt. Now, most fans are like, well, I'm sure Rhodes isn't just going to get laid there. As he does get hit, AEW will find a way out of it. But nope, we got to that episode of Dynamite, and Cody quite literally got whooped. The true highlight, of course, though, is that even though Maxwell Jacob Friedman got more and more aggressive with these, so did Cody, or at least he got more emotional. It was like he wasn't going to let him break his spirit, and obviously that pissed Friedman off. And even when the Young Bucks and Brandy Rhodes were like, stop, it wouldn't happen. And of course, Wardlow did one of these too, and that was going to tie in. Because 2 years later, he found himself in a feud with Maxwell, so then he had to take these hits, but he stood there like a superhero, as if to say, I'm really big, and you can't get to my man-meat. So talk about cold, but it just told you there is more than one way to crack an egg, and all of this just made you feel, man. And how did we do it? Violence. Number 7, Swerve is constantly insane. So as we saw it out, Swerve Strickland is sort of brilliant when it comes to pro wrestling, because he has done all these terrible things, and we still cheer him. Even when some of these matches in questions didn't connect with the fans, he would still find a way to drag them in a little bit, much like he did at Blood and Guts 2024. Because the Elite Takeover AEW story hadn't really got to the point that we were hoping for. But when Swerve Strickland entered that cage and realized he was surrounded by his enemies, they all decided, hey, we've got a staple gun here, and we are going to staple you so bad that you're probably going to bleed. And do you know what Swerve did? He just stood there and took it. So you went from being like, oh my gosh, that's disgusting, to, oh my gosh, he's a superhero, especially because he got revenge. He got this would-be weapon, and he attacked him back. So there's no two ways about it when we talk about that one. Taking a staple gun and putting the staple into someone's skin so the red stuff comes out, well, that's totally flubbed up. But it certainly got a reaction out of me. Number 6, Darby Allin really likes Stone Cold Steve Austin's entrance music. So I'm being facetious. I'm talking about the glass break. Because at Revolution, when Sting decided he was going to retire, of course he teamed with his best friend Darby Allin to take on the Young Bucks. Darby must have woken up that morning and said, you know what? I've got to do right by my fake dad. So after laying Nick Jackson on a plane of class, Allin climbed the tallest ladder you'd ever seen, and he dove onto his would-be opponent, who moved, and Darby Allin went smashing through this thing. It's one of the most disgusting things you're ever going to see. As always, people like Darby Allin can't keep doing this, yet somehow he can. And when the camera zoomed in on his back, I tell you, my friends, he was bleeding in around about 4.2 milliseconds. The crowd went absolutely nuts because of course they did, and in a slight bit of irony, it certainly looked like All Elite Wrestling had used real glass. So yeah, it was certainly a sight, And only in wrestling, I suppose. But I think we could leave it until we do it again just a little bit. Number 5, MJF hangs CM Punk. So really, you could take the entire CM Punk and MJF feud and stick it in here. The old thing was pretty damn violent. And whenever you think about Punk's run in AEW too, you cannot throw bones at this. Because man, when you put these two together, dare I say, they created magic. Now it started with a bunch of masterful promos that allowed you to buy in, and the secret sauce that after a while, you were listening to Max, you started going, I feel a bit sorry for this guy, and do you know who else fell into that trap? CM Punk. This was just days before their dog collar match, which was also very violent, and as soon as Punk had let his guard down, MJF attacked with the Pinnacle to the point they basically wrapped a piece of rope around CM Punk's neck, and yep, they hanged him. The image is on the screen now. Nobody is doing this, but it was still horrible. He was totally bloodied when they were doing this too, but it just reminded you sometimes wrestling can be unhinged, and it hits a certain emotive quality in your tum-tum, and for whatever reason, it makes you want to tune in again. It also allowed MJF to feel super duper dangerous, which he needed going into this pay-per-view. So yes, this may not be for you, but in terms of ticking the boxes, it did a damn good job. Number 4, Brody Lee decimates the Rhodes family. So I put this here deliberately because sometimes violence doesn't mean blood, and blood doesn't mean violence. But August 22nd, 2020 was a hard time for all of us and pro wrestling because we were knee-deep in the global pandemic. So like other promotions that were running, Tony Khan looked across his roster and decided, we gotta do something big. This was when Brody Lee was brought in, and yes, Cody Rhodes is the TNT champion, and he was having a pretty good run with that belt when Brode was like, I don't care, I'm going to crush you and I'm going to take it. And my gosh, that's exactly what he did. I mean, he literally threw Cody around before he defeated him like he was nobody. And not only that, but now he had the title. And the more dark part actually came after this because Lee started to cut a promo. And as Cody Rhodes was getting stretched out there, he told his minions, no, I don't like that. You should push him off the thing. Damn it, they did. Lee Johnson also took out Arn Anderson, and Dustin Rhodes was even dragged out to the back. This felt a little bit like a kidnapping. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it was super uncomfortable to watch. Brandy even got choked out too, so we just took this Brody Lee character and my word did we give it some edge. Not Adam Copeland, he'd be there in a couple of years. Here's another reason though why Brody Lee's tragic so early on was such a loss. Obviously that's way more important than anything we ever do in wrestling, but we were just getting started with this persona. I really think it could have changed the game. Number 3, Mariah May destroys her teacher. So as soon as Mariah May arrived in AEW in November 2023 and started cozying up to Toni Storm, who was not interested, you just knew exactly where this was gonna go. So it's just a classic tale with the constant intrigue of, well, is she gonna do it now or is she gonna do it today? And actually, Mariah waited until she won that Owen Hart Cup. My gosh, she didn't wait another second. So even though you could have anticipated this, I don't think anybody expected AEW to go this far, because as soon as she grabbed the Owen Hart Cup, she turned around and she bludgeoned Toni Storm to the point the Timeless One was wailing. That's right, she was screaming as if she was gonna die. May even made it poetic because she got the shoe that Toni talked about all the time, and she whacked her right in the hole where the blood was coming from. That still makes me feel a bit queasy. The belt shot she gave her too were just so uncomfortable, and you're a bit like, can somebody come out here to stop this? Because it just got more and more insane. It really will go down as one of the best moments in AEW history though, because not only did you get the heel turn, but it just had emotion pouring out the wham-wham. So once again, yeah, without the blood and without the violence, I don't think you achieve that. That's why sometimes you just gotta do it. Number 2, Jon Moxley suffocates Bryan Danielson. So this was controversial. Can't argue that. I mean, Jon Moxley literally woke up one day and went, yep, I'm going to murder my best friend. Now, it's actually based on an old school angle, but let's just be honest here. New fans aren't going to remember that. It's one of the reasons why you can pull from old wrestling. It feels like it's new again. It was also post All Out 2024 when Bryan Danielson had just retained his AEW World title versus Jack Perry, when he just had to go through hell. Because when Blackpool Combat member Claudia Castagnoli smacked him right in the balls, he couldn't believe it. Then that got even worse, because Moxley snuck up from behind him and he had a plastic bag and he choked him. Honestly, my life flashed before my eyes, and I wasn't even involved. What really made this hit home, though, is that Wheeler Yuta, another member of the Blackpool Combat Club, hadn't been clued up about this, so he too is in the corner, just crying his eyes out. So that just added to how horrendous this was. It was like he was watching his best friend die. So I get why people thought this was excessive, and I totally understand if it's not for you, but it goes to show AEW is happy to cross that line, and as many people that are like, oh man, yeah, this current wrestling is the best, more are gonna be like, oh my gosh, I can't handle it. But I guess you vote with your remotes, but AEW did it, and it was flipping violent. Number 1, Adam Page drinks blood. I mean, where else could we go? It still stuns me that's a sentence. And look, you can see it right now. Now it all ties into the death feud between Adam Page and Swerve Strickland, hence why they keep coming up in this list. And because they had to keep finding ways to outdo each other, well, yeah, they quite literally drunk each other's blood. This was Full Gear 2023, and what was totally nuts is that at this point the Cowboy was meant to be the good guy, but because he just hated Swerve to such a degree, as soon as he saw the red stuff pouring from his head, he basically leant down, shook him a bit, and you saw the blood dripping into the back of his throat. Now, I'll be honest with you, my friends, I never want to see this again, but if you wanted a visceral reaction, well, this went and did it. This also came after the fact they'd stapled each other, so it was properly harrowing, and the fact that Adam Page went and spat it everywhere like he was Triple H at WrestleMania. As of me talking to you two, this happened a long ass time ago, but have I accepted and processed it? No, I haven't. I do want to give props to AEW though for always backing up their stipulations, because from time and loyalty alone, now you know. If they tell you it's going to be violent, they tell you it's going to be brutal, and they tell you it's going to be nuts, that's exactly what you are going to get. There ain't no mucking around here, my buddies, so you better prepare yourself or don't watch at all. But yeah, when another man becomes a vampire and we're talking about violence, that is number one.
Andy Murray, what is Tony Khan's one big mistake?
Airing the footage from the All-In backstage fight between CM Punk and Jack Perry. This was always going to be contentious. It was always going to make half people think it was genius and half people think it was stupid. I was willing to give the decision a chance. I think early on, we spoke about it on video and stuff. And in the aftermath, like, I was cautious, but I wasn't like, okay, this is going to be terrible. And in the aftermath, the way they brought Jack Perry back for a few weeks, for a few months maybe even, Jack Perry was over as a heel for a bit there, and it felt like, okay, maybe this accomplished the goal. Maybe you wanted to use this as a vehicle to get Jack Perry over, all this stuff. But looking at it longer term, now that we're a year, 2 years or whatever, removed from all of this stuff, what benefit has this brought to AEW? The answer is nothing. If anything, it has diminished the company. Number one, it makes them look really petty and silly and weird. And like, I know CM Punk has indulged in a fair bit of that behavior himself, but it increasingly just feels like a way to go, look, he's the bad man there, bad man there. Number two, Jack Perry, he's not even on TV at the moment. His overness as a heel quickly evaporated. He quickly became a one-note act who does a stupid Messiah pose when he loses matches and drives a bus. That's his character. That's the character. He smiles, he drives a bus, and he does a Messiah pose when he loses. There's nothing else there. His work hasn't improved. He's less over today than he was back then now. And what Free ushered in the worst era of the Young Bucks ever with these stupid secession EVP characters that they're still doing after returning a dynasty. And also, business-wise, look at every single KPI for this company. Where have they gone since they aired the footage? It's a pretty easy answer. In 2024, yes, ratings have kind of stabilized a bit, but they're not what they used to be. At the end of the day, this was just, it was a colossal error of judgment from everyone involved. And it made, on a PR level as well, which isn't always quantifiable, it just made them look like the smallest time, pettiest goofs in the universe. There's another argument to be made about certain events that happened before this, and it's like a whole chain reaction that'll come later in this video. But yeah, man, why did they air the footage? Name one tangible long-term benefit audience. I bet you can't do it.
So AEW has been one of the best things ever to happen to wrestling over the last 5 years. It's helped the sport and the industry in general. I wouldn't want it to go away. You see those crazy accounts, I want it to die tomorrow. It's like, first you get a real problem. That can't really be your biggest concern in your life. But having that competition has just made things so much more fun. I think back to Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole debuting back-to-back, which was crazy. Or Ricky Saints recently as well, doing his thing. And all the other people that have gone back. Cody Rhodes, right? One of the best returns I think I've ever seen. And I felt genuinely, awful word to use, but I felt privileged to be there live because I was just like, man, this is the coolest thing ever. But I think probably a mistake that did happen relatively early on was having the 3 shows. So 2 hours on a Wednesday, 1 hour on a Friday, then 2 hours on a Saturday with Collision. And it was 2 hours of Rampage for a while. It was just too much content. And all of a sudden it kind of, and this would happen with not just wrestling, with any show that you have on television, it just starts watering things down because people could watch Dynamite beforehand and know that they were getting 100% of the AEW content. Then all of a sudden there's a Friday show, there's a Saturday show, and you start to feel like you're falling behind. And when you start to feel like you're falling behind, you can't keep up with the narratives. Then you may go, I'll skip Dynamite, or I'll watch the clips on social media because I don't really understand what's going on. And look, anybody would have said yes because it's more money in the pockets. And at that point, AEW was a company trying to cement themselves for however long they are going to be around. But from a consumer point of view, especially because you had so much WWE content, and if you wanted to be a super nerd wrestling fan, you know, so much accessibility to other wrestling content from across the globe, that it just did. The only term to use it again is it just watered things down. And it's kind of like a chicken and egg scenario. Well, that's not the right term to use. But, you know, you don't not do it. But at the same time, it did have a negative, nothing sort of too serious, but just everything that I've already said. It would have been so much better if either Rampage had stayed and we had moved it around, or at least tried to build it back up, because it did come a bit of a B show. But then to add Collision and then tell people, oh no, this is now our sort of secondary show to Dynamite, and then, you know, Rampage becoming a 1 hour on a Friday. And let's not forget that, you know, Rampage had the debut of CM Punk, which is one of the best ratings, I presume, that AEW ever did. So, I mean, it was the same with WWE when they introduced SmackDown, but they have a far better balance now. They've made it work. And I'm sure that AEW will do that too. In fact, I would say it's been better for most of 2025 as I stare off and stumble over my words. But it did hurt at the time. And I don't think that you would have done it in hindsight from a non-financial point of view. I only say that, who are we making excuses for? It's not an excuse, I just want to make sure they get both points across so I know what the comments are going to do. But yeah, essentially I got to watch all of it because I'm very blessed to do this as a job, but it just made it a little bit harder when you didn't want that. And when Dynamite first came along, it was just like this fun, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. So that's what I would have done, but maybe that's the reason I don't run a wrestling promotion. Maybe one day I will.
One Tony Khan mistake you'd erase from history.
One Tony Khan mistake. Well, that's tough. I made some notes on potential mistakes that Tony Khan made, and oh God, Jesus, where do I start here?
That's unbelievable.
If I have to, narrow it down to just one, it would be losing the ability to say no, because it kind of catches a lot of things in one here. Because there was a time period when he did say no and didn't say everything's great, right? We take you back, end of 2019, bit of a shambles, that classic episode of AEW Dynamite that everyone talks about, and immediately after that he was like, right, I'm in charge now, here's what we're going to do, and it launches AEW into a sensational 2020 where they just, you know, dominate NXT, they dominate the conversation, they put on amazing matches, amazing pay-per-views. Nowadays, 2025, it feels like he just can't say no to anything. Should we have a new belt? Sounds great. Should we have another TV show? Great, let's do it. Like, everything Jon Moxley and Chris Jericho pitch. Great, lads. Say no. Say stop doing what you're doing. Like, I get it. They clearly have a long-term strategy for the Death Riders, whether you like that or not. Not for me, obviously. But some stuff you just how has this got to this stage? How has this made it onto television? How have they got a match on pay-per-view when so many other big names, or potentially big names, your Powerhouse Hobbs, all those people that we always talk about as being overlooked, don't get this because Tony Khan just can't say no to people. Ditto, can I have a match on the pay-per-view when the pay-per-view's already got 10 matches on there? Just say no. Say no. Say no, we're going to... I know they do what they do with pay-per-views. That's never going to change. They're going to be 4 or 5 hours, and we're going to have a constant argument with people who, yes, want their money's worth, and we just think, the atmosphere would be better if it was a tighter show or whatever. Yeah, he can't say no, and he should get back to being able to say it, because he's in charge at the end of the day, and when he does say no, that is when AEW produces their best stuff.
So right away, it's important just to say this. Tony Khan has done a lot of good for wrestling, just making AEW a thing, being such an important part of the creation of AEW and leading AEW, being the president of AEW, all this stuff. That's great. It's been good for wrestling. It's led to so many incredible moments that some of my favourite moments in wrestling ever have come from AEW. So they're awesome things straight away. But there's also been a few mistakes along the way, and a big one that I think Tony Khan made, I don't know when it really started coming into effect, but maybe the last couple of years, whatever it is just doing too many pay-per-views. I know I'm a wrestling fan sat here saying there's too much wrestling. Well, woe is me. So many bigger problems going on in the world than watching too much wrestling. But for me, I feel like it's had a detrimental effect on the actual product itself and my experience of watching the product, because back when AEW used to have just 4 pay-per-views, 4 big special pay-per-view events, and then you had your TV specials sprinkled in there and then just your weekly TV, those pay-per-views felt like must-see. It felt like the culmination of so many stories, like the big climax moments were always at these pay-per-views pretty much, and you felt like you just had to tune in. You had to stop what you were doing. You were like, my big event, my big Hangman Adam Page crowning moment, my big CM Punk MJF like final match, they're all going to happen at these big shows. I need to tune in. I need to watch them. And it didn't matter how big they were, because you felt like you were saving up in a way for these big shows. You were like, I will sit and watch a 5-hour pay-per-view because I'm doing it 4 times a year and I'm getting great wrestling. Like I'm willing to invest that time. It's great. I'm up for that. Now that we're at a point where we're on, I don't know, is it like 10 or 12? It feels like there's loads of pay-per-views like now compared to what they used to be. Is like double, triple even. And they've just lost a bit of that specialness, if that's a word, specialness. They've lost a bit of it, because it now just feels like we're in that WWE cycle where it's like there's going to be one a month, and they're quite chunky, each one of them, and they've been normalized a little bit. They don't feel like these special things where it's like, I need to tune in to see what happens. It feels more like a TV special that I'm paying for now. Like you kind of get big moments within storylines, but those storylines keep going on and on and on and on. They're just little checkpoint moments rather than like, whoa, a big crescendo, that's the pay-per-view, then we'll have a reset after the pay-per-view and go again for another couple of months, build some anticipation, then we get another big peak. They're not like that anymore. It's just like little bumps. Like I'm going to make this really clear again, like, the wrestling's great. The pay-per-views are always pretty good. Like, you rarely sit in an AEW pay-per-view and go, that sucked from start to finish. Like, it just doesn't happen. But they just don't have that feeling anymore where you've had that anticipation, that big payoff. Like, the anticipation in wrestling is arguably just as important as the payoff itself. It just is. Like, I like sitting there and getting excited about something, watching a storyline develop over months and months and months and months, and know it's going to lead to this big moment on a big stage. Now it's like, oh, there's a rivalry, and then it has one little checkpoint at one pay-per-view, then we go in another little checkpoint at another pay-per-view, and some people love that. Like, that's been like the WWE system for years and years and years, like for big rivalries. Like, that has happened in the past, but I think for me, I got a bit jaded by that. They've started to do it maybe a little bit less in WWE. Like, I feel like those pay-per-view spots, because they're a bit smaller, their pay-per-views, like apart from WrestleMania, that's like a double one, but their pay-per-views generally are about 3 hours long, so the spaces are more of a premium, so you don't tend to have a lot of like rematches and like continuations of feuds, really. Like, pay-per-view to pay-per-view is what kind of we did in the past, where it was like you had like a 3 series or a 4 series of matches, pay-per-view after pay-per-view, and it was a bit like, oh, okay, another one. And AEW didn't really have that problem for a long time, because the pay-per-views were so spread out. It's like you had a different kind of matchup and they felt fresh and exciting. You could really remember each one of them specifically because they felt so different. I feel like we're losing that a little bit. I get it. All in, stuff like that. You need a big stadium. Get that one in there. Forbidden Doors kind of lost a bit of its like selling point, because a lot of the big players that were in New Japan now have come over to AEW or just not in New Japan. It just doesn't feel as special again anymore. Wrestle Dream's a nice idea, but again, like Dynasty, they're just there. AEW should never feel like it's just there. It should feel special. And I get why Tony's done it, like, because it's more money, and then that's going to be great for Warner Brothers, great for AEW. I understand that, but I think it's had a bad, like a negative effect on the product itself. I'm less excited about the pay-per-views, so I'd say that was a mistake. I'd go back to having 5 or 6 at a max, okay? Make them feel special and just stop overdoing it. Just have TV specials. They worked. They were fine. I'm happy with that. Keep My Winter Is Coming. Keep Spring Break or whatever the hell it's called. All that kind of stuff. And we'll just do that going forward. Undo that mistake. Erase it.
I've sort of reached saturation point, yes, even me, with criticism of Tony Khan's biggest mistakes, because you see it so often if you're in our bubble and our space, like the AEW were dragged over the coals for terrible booking decisions, and that's because for a few years there weren't actually that many. There were the rule-proving exceptions when there was kind of a stinker of an angle or a segment in AEW. So I've gone down a bit of a pettier route. I've just gone back to my memories of not liking the idea of a match and then being proved right in person, and I certainly wasn't alone in this. Plenty of our Mr. Bean looking asses thought it at the time. And it was booking Kenny Omega specifically in that 6-man tag at All In 2023. AEW may never get an opportunity to work a show, run a show in front of a crowd that big ever again. The 80,000 plus or 80,000 plus paid, 70,000 in Wembley for All In 2023. An amazing, incredible history-making event with no hyperbole there. And there were elements of that card that totally worked. There was the main event between MJF and Adam Cole, while Divisive was just incredibly over in the building on the night. And, the quarter hours bore out that there was certainly a lot of investment in that story at the time. Punk and Joe knocked out a 3.5 in the opener. There was some highlights to be found, but a lot of the card, much in the same way as happened with WrestleMania 41, felt like big show compromises. Not Paul White, he was on the pre-show. But the idea of the sort of the impetus being to get wrestlers on the card rather than in matches that truly mattered and that were befitting of the stage. And there was none more obvious and apparent than the Kenny Omega, Hangman Page and Kota Ibushi versus the Bing Bang Gang 6-man tag. Or trios match, sorry. I suppose the pushback to that be, it's inoffensive. Well, it offended me that Kenny Omega was coming out as part of a trio. It offended me that, Hangman Page, the character that I have been informed for 6 years now is the main character. And look, even I'm starting to buy that he's probably the tree. But so what's the main character doing in a 6-man? What's the main character doing as part of a trio, as part of a very mid-card story in a very mid-card match that had some very mid spots? It didn't feel right in the build, and a lot of fans, again at the time, were just told to shut up because we were supposed to be going to this great show, and we were getting all selfish because we're limey, Mr. Bean looking ass Brits. But then on the night, I think we were all proved right, all 80,000 of us, as we responded to some of the cool spots, and we let off some of the ill-timed ones. But did it leave any impression, really, other than on Dave Meltzer, who went very high on it and loved it? Did it matter ultimately long-term in the stories? Not really. And we will never get a 70, 80,000 attended AEW show, maybe ever again. So we certainly won't get the opportunity for a Kenny Omega in particular, or a main character Hangman Page, to have that night, that moment, that scale of thing take place in the way it could have done in All In 2023. There are little individual moments of bad television, bad pay-per-views, bad booking, whatever, but that one will stick out to me as the kind of ultimate wasted opportunity from a sheer selfish point of view of getting to see a man who you could very believably call the greatest of all time not get the biggest possible bouquet of flowers.
For me, I would absolutely erase Tony Khan ever getting physical. Of course, Tony said at various points in time that he would never get physical, and then he did, and it was awful. Yet again, this was something where the roots could be traced back to CM Punk, to AEW's lack of basic management skills, and to the ridiculous decision to air that footage on your television. As part of the decision to show CM Punk mildly choking out Jack Perry, that led to the AEW return of Jack Perry as the scapegoat, which in turn led to the Young Bucks asking Tony to reinstate Jack. And so, yes, we had that faux apology from Jack Perry where he winked at the camera and then he hit Tony Khan in the gut with a microphone. And it was laughable, man. It was the bump Tony took. The fact that he paused before then going oh yeah, I need to grab my ribs. Sell the ribs, brother. The awkward movements he had on the mat. It was just bad, man. It was just really bad all around. And that's before Tony then took the Tony Khan driver from the Young Bucks, which also looked just so goofy. Speaking of goofy as well, let's not forget Tony turning up at the NFL draft in a neck brace, which, to be fair, on the surface, I think that is fantastic. After all, sell the injury. This is a guy, a non-wrestler, taking these moves. He's going to be really messed up. His neck's all broken. And yeah, the problem is, yes, Tony Khan wore a neck brace, but he didn't exactly sell his neck. Instead, he was constantly smiling, constantly laughing. His head was on a swivel, which kind of negates any sort of selling of the neck and any damage to that neck. All of this just made Tony Khan like a laughing stock. You had NFL analysis. They were mocking him. Not to mention supposedly the reactions of people in both the AEW and WWE locker rooms as just who could not believe the stupidity of all of this. Plus, showing the All In footage was partly done to show that CM Punk angrily confronted Tony Khan, which in part led to CM Punk's firing. Yet here's Jack Perry and the Young Bucks assaulting Tony Khan on TV, but still keeping their jobs. Like the EVPs now have more power than, the actual owner. This whole story with the Elite it sucked the life out of AEW, much like the Death Riders. And so much of it traces back to the night that Tony Khan got physical for the first time. And it was one of the most hey, look at this, it's all fake moments in modern wrestling history. Just please never do that again, Tony.
Well, I was tempted. I was unsure rather as to how far I was going to go with this.
Because realistically, his biggest mistake was allowing the events of Brawl Out to A, happen in the first place, and B, linger unresolved with this really naive head in the sand idea of splitting the rosters and making everyone happy. It was an untenable situation that he almost ran away from, thinking everything was going to be okay. You could make the argument, which I'm going to attempt to do now, that literally signing CM Punk in the first place was a mistake. And I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous because CM Punk is responsible for some of the most immortal moments in AEW history, and at this point, by extension, pro wrestling history. Certainly in the weeks ahead of the actual debut, the expert viral marketing campaign, that 99% certainty, but that 1% of doubt was totally magic. Not a single person, there's actually one, but not. Certainly it wasn't me thinking, this could go wrong, he's got a reputation. I was just completely enamored with the idea, fixated on watching Rampage on that Friday. Okay, so it is a hard one to argue. But when you look back at it in retrospect, there is a sense that, and it's ironic, I understand like Tony Khan gets a lot of criticism, and he must think sometimes, can I do anything right? There's always going to be a criticism. It is the most scrutinized, over-scrutinized company in pro wrestling history. Because the one time he does something expertly that a lot of people, in my opinion, rightly believe he doesn't do enough of, and that is actual effective promotion. One of the biggest promotional masterstrokes ever was the marketing behind the CM Punk debut. It was almost too effective in that AEW was almost framed as this pro wrestling utopia that got everything so right, the scale, the creative freedom, the success of the first 1 or 2 years. It felt like everything had to be perfect, this fragile ecosystem to summon the great, elusive, mythical firebrand Phillip Brooks into it. It's like we finally created something perfect. It was almost as if on that night it was all for him. Like they'd carefully curated this perfect pro wrestling utopia promotion, so good that even CM Punk would want to walk in. So he drastically changes the complexion, indeed the entire purpose of what AEW is. So when it goes drastically wrong, and obviously it does, it feels like, well, that's just something we can never recover from. And we sit here, Wilborn asking me the question, me answering it, Andy Murray with the cameras, recording in April 2025. Brawl Out happened in September 2022, and that is really the catalyst for the feeling being lost, right? It is April 2025, and for reasons I don't agree with, narratively, AEW, for whatever reason, is still exploring the idea that the company was fundamentally broken in 2022. Does that happen if such a massive deal out of the great mythical CM Punk is made? I'm not entirely sure. Realistically, it's Brawl Out, but you could, and I'm trying to make the argument that maybe signing him in the first place, or at least making the biggest deal imaginable. What if he got like injured 4 months in? You know, like it was just, I think the promotion was almost too effective. And the problem with CM Punk is that even before the AEW run, like, I mean, we got so much money out of it, realistically, of putting him in thumbnails at every rumor of him returning. He's just such this shadow looming over everything that maybe all along they were asking for trouble by putting all of their trust in CM Punk. And the events of Brawl Out and the stories, like the little minor subplots, the sound bites, the promo that he cut, I don't think any booker ever in their prime, right? Like Watts, Baba, Ghetto, you know, none of them could craft a pro wrestling storyline as interesting, fascinating, as obviously real as CM Punk's exit from AEW and everything that led into it. AEW will never be able to tell a fictional story more engaging than the real one. That was the thing that damned them ultimately. So after all that hype and all of the brilliance across Eddie Kingston, MJF, you know, I kind of just wish it never happened.
AEW has boasted some truly brilliant title runs over the years, with Kenny Omega's belt collector reign, Cody Rhodes' first TNT run, Orange Cassidy's time on top of the International Mountain, and many more showing what the company can achieve at its best. Not all reigns can be great though. In fact, some have been utterly crap and have done damage that the company is still trying to recover from. So I'm Gareth, this is WhatCulture Wrestling, and here are the 10 worst title reigns in AEW history. Number 10, The Elite, September 4th, 2022 to September 7th, 2022. More on the other belt that was severely damaged by everything that happened on the night of All Out 2022 later. But AEW's brand new Trios Championships being won, then immediately vacated, did little help to a division that already felt like it was being formally launched a year or two late. The Elite were great winners of a great tournament, and would prove that again in a captivating best-of-7 series with Death Triangle when they returned to television from their suspension. But the belts being drenched in controversy from the off left a stain that hasn't really been washed away during the coldest period in AEW history. Trios matches required their constant presence and attention to sell the idea that this was where the best wrestled, long before the company forced it through as a catchphrase. They had been pulled into the whirlwind of chaos stirred up by CM Punk's words in the All Out 2022 press scrum. The belts came with them, and it understandably felt like forever before the performers and the prizes were back to their best. There have been some properly great matches fought over those straps though, right? So I want to know right now, what is your favourite in all of AEW history? That's right, your favourite Trios World Championship match in AEW history. Pop it in the comments. Number 9, Jack Perry, June 30th, 2024 to November 23rd, 2024. There's nothing wrong in a noble failure of a push in pro wrestling, and that's what Jack Perry's 2024 will ultimately go down as, folks. He was given major wins, major matches, and for better and worse, one of the major moments of the year. Yep, let's talk about it. Taking out Tony Khan to reveal the full formation of a new Elite alongside the Young Bucks and Kazuchika Okada was supposed to be a transgression so enormous that it justified showing camera footage of the real Wembley fight with CM Punk weeks earlier, and launched the group into the stratosphere with the scapegoat at the forefront. He eventually became the TNT champion as an integral part of the story, but the lack of credibility in the foundation of the group, and realistically Perry's matches, lowered the status of the division below the numerous other mid-card titles at the company's disposal. The former Jungle Boy was a rule-proving exception in his biggest year yet. While there were too many wrestlers getting not enough time, he was getting too much time in place of too many other wrestlers. Number 8, Chris Jericho, April 21st, 2024 to August 25th, 2024. The FTW Championship being brought into All Elite Wrestling as a serious title to fight for was always stretching the gold beyond its original premise, but Chris Jericho getting hold of it in 2024 to allegedly help move Hook up to some mythical next level was a case of the idea completely eating itself. The cold-hearted handsome devil was the latest to get caught in the Jericho vortex. Not the gimmick kind, if the gimmick is even a gimmick because it's a shoot. Oh, my head hurts. But the fact that the entire story of Hook being robbed of the gold only to win it back at Wembley was one that had been done with Jack Perry a year prior seemed to have escaped Jericho's attention as he went through loads of the same motions. A series of themed weapons brawls on television did nothing to justify the spot both the champion and championship commanded over a miserable few months, before he predictably lost it back in a sequence of events he pretended was star-making. Does Hook feel like any more of a star after this feud? The answer, yes, is no. That made sense in my head. One only needs to look at the retirement of the title in the immediate aftermath to see how ineffective it all was. Upon reclaiming the belt, Hook handed the strap to father and originator Taz, and back on the mantelpiece it went. Let's leave it there now, yeah? Number 7, The Young Bucks, April 21st, 2024 to October 30th, 2024. Yeah, a lot of these went down in 2024, didn't they? And there's more to come. Matthew and Nicholas Jackson have since explained that several different pitches didn't make air that might have made their 2024 run with the tag team gold more interesting. And it is worth caveating any criticism of this particular period with the reminder that they still had two of the best television matches of the year and delivered an immensely satisfying title change. But, and this is a big old but, expectations for the brothers are permanently set to sky high, and a run going so many days without a defense was bad form, even if it was in service of their new EVP's gimmick. The division felt like it was being discarded creatively, and with the Bucks atop the pile and only Sting's retirement match justifying finally desperately getting the belts in a pay-per-view main event, the criticisms grew louder. It at least ended on a high, but that too was somewhat transparent and extremely short-lived. The last couple of years have been ones to forget for the Elite, and few will share treasured memories of this title run to go alongside them. Number 6, Sammy Guevara and Scorpio Sky, January 26, 2022 to July 6, 2022. Time has been particularly unkind to it, but the feud between Sammy Guevara and Scorpio Sky was a major factor in the decline of the TNT Championship's prestige. What started with potential, especially considering both competitors' then untapped in-ring talent, quickly devolved into a series of forgettable moments and misguided booking decisions that tarnished the once promising title. Initially, the TNT Championship had a strong reputation, often featuring some of AEW's best performers in high-profile matches. It was a symbol of everything a thriving mid-card should be. But once Guevara and Sky entered the scene, well, the championship's credibility took a hit. Sammy's increasingly self-centered character and reckless booking, such as his inconsistent title defenses and reliance on shocking over-the-top angles, made the belt feel like a prop rather than a meaningful prize. And that's not what you want. Sky's involvement only compounded the issue. His character, which initially had promise as a serious contender, was muddled by unnecessary backstage drama and a lack of proper storytelling. Instead of elevating the title, the feud between the two became more about personal animosities and backstage politics than the actual championship. This shift in focus caused fans to lose interest in what was once AEW's most prestigious secondary title. And in the end, the Guevara-Sky feud didn't just fail to elevate either competitor, it diminished the very concept of the TNT Championship, leaving it feeling like an afterthought rather than a coveted prize. AEW desperately needs to refocus and rebuild the credibility of the TNT title if it hopes to restore the prestige it once had. Giving it to Adam Cole is not a bad start, baby. Just a quick one, if you're into this sort of AEW wrestling list and want more of this kind of stuff, then it's very simple. Just tap that subscribe button down below and you will get more. That's just what you do. Number 5, Private Party, October 30th, 2024 to January 22nd, 2025. Private Party's 2024 tag team title reign in AEW is so widely regarded as a dead rubber that it wasn't even a surprise when top heel group The Hurt Syndicate were received like heroes when they effortlessly dethroned them in an extended squash. Look, Isaiah Cassidy and Mark Quinn are talented performers with charisma and in-ring ability, but hopes of a strong reign were quickly dashed due to the total lack of significant title defenses and story developments while holding the gold. Over 3 months, they only defended the titles twice, at Full Gear in a chaotic 4-way match where their win felt more like luck than skill, and a milquetoast win against Lio Rush and Action Andretti that you probably can't even remember. This period was marked by a noticeable absence of narrative progression for both Private Party and the tag team division as a whole, which fans quickly picked up on and subsequently rejected in kind. Ultimately, the championship run did not leverage the potential to elevate the team or enrich the division's storylines. Instead, it just became a tragic footnote in AEW's history, remembered more for its shortcomings than any memorable achievements. It all felt like a bit of a waste of time, really. Number 4, CM Punk, May 29th, 2022 to August 24th, 2022. Few would have predicted it, and even fewer could have spotted it, but the eventual explosion of tension between CM Punk and AEW was bubbling under from before he won his first AEW championship. But things might have gone differently had the Second City Saint not jumped into the crowd on his first Dynamite as champion and broken his foot. Silly Phil. An immediate injury wrote him off television for the summer months, but the decision was made to keep him champion in order to do a bout with whoever claimed interim gold in his absence. That man was Jon Moxley, somebody then so deservedly beloved by audiences that the potential dream match between the pair became more of a political war than a kayfabe one. Moxley's squash win over Punk on television to set up their pay-per-view blow-off weeks later reeked of compromise and lack of communication, and the worst was still yet to come. Oh, but we'll get there. Number 3, the Death Riders, August 24th, 2024. Until they've still got the belts at time of recording, so I don't know. Furthering the idea that the division and titles are cursed, Claudio Castagnoli, Wheeler Yuta, and Pac won the belts as a makeshift Blackpool Combat Club offshoot in the sunshine of Wembley Stadium in 2024, only to plunge them back into darkness when they all became part of a sludgy Jon Moxley takeover of All Elite Wrestling. Yes, they're credible wrestlers, but who isn't in 2025? Like, good wrestling is everywhere, across every product, televised and and otherwise, making a further mockery of the Moxley character shift based on how he supposedly wants to reshape the product. Why do you need to? There's good wrestling, it's fine. And even with title defenses, and there hasn't been many, the quality hasn't risen to such an extent that the hostage situation / vacuum effect created by their reign has solved the problem of dragging the gold back from irrelevance. This isn't the biggest crime the group have committed with the title though. Oh no. Number 2, Jon Moxley, October 12th, 2024 to... he still got it. At time of recording, something might have happened, I pray. A worst case scenario for the AEW Championship and the product writ large. Jon Moxley literally holding the belt hostage in a briefcase has come to symbolize a total loss of connection between the promotion's former conscience and what its core audience desperately wants to see. Muddled Creative reintroduced Moxley's character as a harbinger of doom for the roster, determined to take out the supposedly weak and fix a broken organization. Acknowledging that the show hadn't been all that good was the first misfire, because Mox, the heel, was ultimately speaking on behalf of a loud portion of the fanbase. Not very heelish. Then, when he took to attempting to murder various members of the roster in cartoonish ways, he broke one too many unwritten wrestling rules and flushed away his own credibility in the process. Ironically, 2025 has seen several encouraging creative signs of life for the distant challenger brand, but the main event picture, patrolled by the Death Riders, is almost universally derided as its Achilles heel. Mission accomplished then? And if so, then please let somebody else have and show off the belt to celebrate, please. I miss that beautiful shiny thing, and I will not miss whatever the hell this Death Rider spell has been. And number 1, CM Punk, September 4th, 2022 to September 7th, 2022. The best in the world was the worst for the world title picture in 2022, when mere minutes after winning it, he unleashed a now infamous verbal tirade on the state of the organization via brutal digs at the expense of the EVPs and anybody else that had wronged him. CM Punk's needle-moving ability was and is without compare in All Elite Wrestling, but the all-out press conference explosion was as damaging to business in the short term as it was long. A long-awaited rematch with MJF was as good as dead. Dream potential contests against Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks were torched, and the relationship between the Second City Saint and the Challenger brand's core base was destroyed forever. The only natural outcomes were suspensions and title strippings, and that's what happened as early as the following Wednesday's Dynamite. It made for what's likely to be one of, if not the shortest reigns ever, whilst plunging the value of the belt and perception of the company's inner workings to an all-time low. Look in my eyes, what do you see? The worst title reign in AEW history. Yeah, it works.
I love AEW, I truly do. Before the usual people go off, I love WWE too, and I find the best wrestling comes to us as fans when the two are both flying. The competition breeds the best creative. So as we do arrive at the 5-year mark for All Elite Wrestling, which is terrifying because it has gone so fast, let us enjoy some of their best moments ever. Number 10, the ending of the first AEW Dynamite. So here is some trivia. AEW was keen for AJ Styles to pop up at the end of the first ever Dynamite. AJ then decided to stay with WWE, but still, All Elite Wrestling went and hit a home run. The whole show was so exciting because it was new when our first match was Cody Rhodes versus Sammy Guevara. Talk about making it clear a new generation had arrived. As soon as Cody won, he made sure to shake Sammy's hand too. He was on the level. Guevara wasn't interested, which was going to tie into our main event of Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks taking on Chris Jericho, Santana, and Ortiz, because once again, freshness had arrived. For not only did Omega get taken out by Jon Moxley, who was on a tear, but Sammy returned and helped the heels when, of all the people, Jake Hagar turned up to underline the fact we had a new faction, the Inner Circle. Now, some people will say the former Jack Swagger is not the same as an AJ Styles, but that wasn't the point. AEW in one fell swoop had established that anything could happen. You were going to have to go and watch the show. He also wrecked the trying to help Dustin Rhodes, which helped, and the wild brawl that ended things left fans wanting more. It was perfect, for sure, no one thought this was on the menu. It also kicked off long-term storytelling, which is a big reason some people were done with WWE. Let's just summarize, it was a very fun evening. Number 9, MJF's storytelling. When we go back to the stories, it's almost like that's important in wrestling. It was after All Out 2021 where I think MJF really kicked into gear, as he cut a promo that was interrupted by one CM Punk. Max then revealed his fan relationship with CM and ended by asking for a handshake. This wasn't lip service, for once Friedman meant it, he held CM Punk in the highest regard. And he also hated him, but we'll get there. The whole point, though, was that MJF had been a huge Punk fan, which you could find on social media. And the reason he kept going is because he saw a photo of Bryan Danielson and Punk embracing. In many ways, you could say he was inspired. As Punk had walked out on the WWE in 2014, however, Maxwell now wanted revenge, because talking about crapping on somebody's dreams, CM only ever thought about himself. The whole feud then reached another level, and man, it totally ruled. The dog collar match is worth anybody's time, and the only real shame is that we didn't get a round 2, because that was definitely on the cards. I'm sure it will happen again in the future, but either way, if you've never watched AEW and want a program to begin with, choose this one. You will love it. Number 8, Britt Baker is caked in blood, and so is Thunder Rosa, because this match ruled. It feels less effective now as time moves on, but AEW telling these two they could go out there and have a proper street fight felt like new ground had been broken. People were still very much looking at what WWE was doing to structure their pro wrestling, and this was the total opposite. It was a proper lights out match too, as there were no rules, and it featured thumbtacks, tables, ladders, and all sorts of weaponry. And when Baker applied the lockjaw, she even rolled back through the drawing pins. Whatever it took. Britt's bloody face became an iconic image, as did Thunder's big victory. It could be why fans got upset a year or so after this. The women's division went in the other direction, but hey, let's not forget what we did do here. It was the best violent female brawl we'd had on American TV in ages. Number 7, Eddie Kingston's Firewalk. And this one sort of evoked the same feelings. Eddie Kingston returning to the ring, drawing anarchy in the arena because he wanted to set somebody on fire. It was pure Grand Theft Auto and all the better for it. Only somebody like Eddie could have pulled this off thanks to his very believable promos, and his target was Christopher Jericho. Therefore, he had found some gasoline, and yep, this was gonna happen. The match itself lived up to the name as AEW captured chaos in a bottle, and again, we'd seen so much, maybe Kingston would do this. Look what came afterwards. We did actually see people get set ablaze. That wasn't happening across the way. This really does summarize what Eddie Kingston was all about, though, and as ever, I'm not totally sure he knows wrestling is predetermined, and therefore when I do search my feelings, I totally love him. Number 6, Sting's retirement. I mean, you can throw this at number 1 if you want, because forget AEW. I think this is one of the best moments in wrestling history. We can debate the existence of All Elite Wrestling till the cows come home, but for their treatment of legends alone, yeah, thank goodness they exist. The Revolution 2024 show was built around Sting, and it was just perfect. I'm not ashamed to say I had water coming out of my seeing devices. I had watched this guy for years, and here he was going out as the hero he always was meant to be. We should do this more. The match himself, as he teamed with fake son Darby alongside his very real children to take down the Young Bucks, couldn't have been better either. When the bell rang, everybody lost it. Let's not forget this was a veteran going over the young guys too, but nobody was bothered. AEW read the room. I don't want to be that guy, but imagine WWE had done the same thing with a Kurt Angle. There was genuine concern that Steve Borden may get his way and lose, but thank goodness that was overruled. Really is one of the best memories you can have. Sting also left feeling bigger than he ever had been, which was incredibly hard to pull off. An all-time moment, and it all happened in AEW. 5, the GOAT wins the big one. So I sat front row for All In 2024, and getting to see this up close and personal was wonderful. Genuinely an experience I will never forget. It was very similar to Sting, as fans were worried Bryan Danielson was going to lose to Swerve Strickland, even more so because the American Dragon had put his career on the line. I don't think anybody was ready for Bryan to go away forever. In front of 50,000 Wembley fans, the two took us on such a great ride though, including the 1-2 ooh after Swerve's big pressure finisher. I bought that hook, line and sinker. I don't think anybody had kicked out of it before. Much like Sting, we kept this simple though, and after focusing on Danielson's family a lot and involving Hangman Adam Page, which also made sense, Bryan applied the LeBell Lock and for the first time became the AEW champion. It wasn't too dissimilar to what WWE had done a decade prior. It really was a fantastic moment, however, and when Danielson does walk away, it will be a reminder of what a legend he was, a true master of the game. This is proof of all of that and more before Revolution 2020. So this was more the entire pay-per-view than the moment, but still, if people were waiting for AEW to lay their trump card, it may have come at Revolution 2020. I wouldn't even say it was the company's best show, but in terms of making fans understand what the aim was, this was drowning in the feeling. I hate that word, but I get it. Kenny Omega was foreshadowing his heel turn whilst being the best babyface, as he as Hangman Adam Page had an amazing tag team match with the Young Bucks. And I know that sentence barely makes sense, but believe you me, it ruled. Jon Moxley also had a great brawl with Chris Jericho, who was arguably at his AEW peak as Le Champion. And then there was Cody versus MJF. The new neck tattoo almost threatened to derail things, but it was still awesome. Orange Cassidy was also here, proving a very satisfying point as February 2020 sent shockwaves around the industry. Now there is some exaggeration to that, but still, it really was pretty excellent stuff. Number 3, Omega versus Danielson. I mean, if we go back to talking about the moment, seeing Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson just look at each other as New York lost their minds, it was amazing. Danielson, who never cared about breaking character, just smiled like the happiest man on the planet, whereas Omega tried to keep his cool, but he couldn't. This was Grand Slam in 2021, and let's face it, this was a dream match, and the fact we were getting it on free TV was mad. You also had thousands of people going crazy. Once again, it was excellent. Let's not forget that when they finally locked up, they also lived up to expectations, so everything here was just the best. Look, I'm going to say it again. Without AEW, maybe this never would have happened. There's also something in the sense we're still waiting for a round 2. It is crazy All Elite Wrestling has held off so long, but it worked. Look how happy it made everyone. Number 2, the brothers go to war. This was Double or Nothing, or AEW's first ever show technically. And boy howdy did it tell you what the deal was. After years of angling for it, Cody Rhodes and Dustin Rhodes were able to have their big match, and my gosh, talk about getting fans emotional. Many people claimed afterwards they had brought back pro wrestling, and while slightly hyperbolic, I know what they meant. It was just so violent but charged with drama that it reminded you what sports entertainment could be. We shouldn't even use that word. We were deliberately going for something else. As screwed up as it sounds, there was also a refreshing amount of blood which we hadn't seen much on these shores for a while, and the match actually felt like it meant something to both. They had to go out there and perform. Dustin's sell job was genuinely worrisome as he looked dead too, whereas Cody signaled to everybody he had come of age, and look, if the American Nightmare ever does turn heel, you can see the tidbits of that here. He understood the assignment, and if you put this in one little package, it is modern day greatness. Number 1, that Dark Order entrance at Fight for the Fallen 2021. It doesn't get spoken about enough, but this entrance, courtesy of the Dark Order, was all about the fans. They believed in Hangman Adam Page like we all did too, and as we couldn't get in the ring ourselves, they would have to be our mirror. They were facing the Elite too, so we had some stakes, and the video before this. It was all about being a man and having an emotions, which was totally fine. The other part of it is that it was a very deliberate nod to one Brody Lee. Now that tribute show is the best thing AEW has ever done and probably ever will do, but I thought we should focus on specific wrestling moments in this list, but let's make it clear. The way Tony Khan shifted that Dynamite to pay tribute to the former Luke Harper, it was beyond wonderful, and if I'm completely honest, there are no words. After the Dark Order and the Cowboy had arrived here, you also got the bad guys turning up being inspired by Space Jam, which was utterly ridiculous, and you have all the licensed music to boot. AEW deserves credit for their use of that too. It does add a lot. Oddly, the match itself divided people, but it was one of the most fun times I'd had in wrestling that year, mostly as we were knee-deep in that Hangman story. That whole narrative deserves all the praise as well. The Elite were also right on top of the game, and I suppose I've ranked this here as you could show it to a lapsed fan, and they would likely get it. Maybe they'd even be intrigued to watch more. It encapsulated the promotion in more ways than one, and it's good to never forget that.